Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something so bizarre, so spiritually chaotic, and so unexpectedly corporate that you might actually question whether you're dreaming already. Because tonight we're talking about DMT. Yes, DMT. The ancient shamanic, soul-launching, reality-melting compound that Silicon Valley somehow looked at and said, yeah, this should be a productivity tool. So before we get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of thing. Seriously, no pressure. This channel is basically a cozy sleepover where we whisper about history's weirdest decisions. And thank you for suggesting this topic. It's been such a joy to explore. And hey, leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. It's always comforting to know someone else is awake at 2:37 a.m, contemplating the meaning of existence. Now dim the lights, put on a fan for that gentle white noise, snuggle into your pillows and take a deep breath. Because we're about to explore the unhinged transformation of a sacred spiritual ritual into a badge of honor for tech bros who unironically use phrases like, biohack my inner potential. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to drink a centuries-old jungle brew designed to make your ancestors talk to a glowing panther spirit? And then imagine someone named Tyler from Palo Alto saying, bro, this is going to help me optimize my sleep cycle. How did we get from shamans chanting around fires to a guy with a Patagonia vest asking the universe for startup funding? Why does everyone in tech pretend they saw God even when they definitely just saw their unpaid taxes floating toward them? And is there a polite way to tell someone their life-changing spiritual awakening sounds suspiciously like a panic attack in a beanbag chair? And now congratulations, you've just woken up in the world of DMT, but not the mystical, palm leaf, humming forest version. No. You're in the strange hybrid reality where Silicon Valley meets ancient Amazonian spirituality, a realm where venture capitalists attempt enlightenment in Airbnb yurts, and shamans wonder if anyone here has ever actually touched grass. Good luck. Deep in the Amazonian rainforest, long before hoodies and Wi-Fi, you find yourself kneeling beside a simmering pot of ayahuasca, a brew so potent it could make your tax returns cry. The air hums with chants, smoke and mystery. This is where DMT began, as a doorway to the spirit world, not a networking opportunity. At first, you're just trying to process the sensory overload, the thick jungle heat wrapping around you like a humid bear hug, the rhythmic chanting of the shamans vibrating through your ribcage, and the smell of the brew, earthy, bitter, and vaguely reminiscent of regret. There's no Spotify playlist called Deep Mystical Vibes. No one is filming this on their phone. Nobody has said the words growth mindset yet. It's just you, the jungle, and a pot of liquid capable of launching your consciousness into orbital patterns. The shaman beside you moves with a calm, grounded certainty. The kind of certainty you wish you had when ordering at a new restaurant. His hands work over the pot with reverence, stirring the leaves and vines with the precision of someone who understands the difference between spiritual transformation and accidentally poisoning a tourist. He's part healer, part botanist, part therapist, and part cosmic tour guide. And he already knows, just by glancing at you, that you're not ready. No one ever is. He hands you a cup. It's small, carved from a gourd, and filled with a dark, glistening liquid that looks like it could strip paint. You stare into it as if it might blink first. But this isn't kombucha. This isn't a trendy wellness shot from a juice bar that promises alignment. This is centuries of tradition condensed into a cup that absolutely does not care how stressed you are at work. You raise it to your lips. The moment the brew touches your tongue, you understand two things. One, ancient cultures were unbelievably hardcore, and two, you're not going to be able to pretend this tastes okay. It's bitter, earthy, sour, and somehow electrical. It tastes like a forest floor that hired a personal trainer, but you swallow anyway, because everyone else here has, and also because you'd like to spiritually evolve at least enough to stop doom-scrolling every night. At first, nothing happens. You sit there, waiting, breathing deeply, pretending the swirling sensation in your stomach is anticipation and not concern. The fire crackles. Someone coughs. A mosquito whispers a personal threat in your ear. The shaman begins singing, soft melodic chants called Icaros, and the sound feels like it's wrapping around your brain. Then it hits. The jungle doesn't just surround you, it inhales you. The trees seem to, stretch taller. The stars brighten like stage lights, and your internal monologue suddenly develops surround sound. You're not quite falling and not quite floating. You're in that weird liminal space usually reserved for dreams and poorly designed roller coasters. Colours shift, patterns breathe, and the air feels thick, as if reality just installed a software update. You blink, and the forest seems to blink back. This is the world the shamans have known for generations, a place spirits traverse, ancestors visit, lessons emerge, and the ego takes a long, quiet nap. Your guide sits beside you, unbothered, because he's seen this 1,000 times. Meanwhile, you're sitting there wondering if the trees just made eye contact. You hear a faint rustle. For a moment, you think it's an animal. Then you realise it's your sense of identity taking a walk without you. Visions ripple through your mind. Some are profound, symbols older than language, truths whispered by something cosmic that may or may not be judging your life choices. Others are less profound, like the sudden realization that your childhood haircut was indeed as bad as you thought. Time melts. Space rearranges itself like it's redecorating, and through it all, the jungle seems to cradle you. Not gently, necessarily, but firmly, like a parent who's tired of you skipping emotional development. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Eventually the world settles. The colours soften, your breathing evens out. You return to your body, sweaty, exhausted, humbled, and certain of one thing. This ancient ceremony was never meant to be packaged into a weekend retreat brochure. You open your eyes. The shaman nods knowingly, and somewhere deep in the forest, a jaguar probably rolls its eyes at you. Kindly, of course. Because here, in the birthplace of DMT, enlightenment isn't a hack, it's a journey. And you just took your first very clumsy step. You sit with indigenous healers who look at you with calm, timeless eyes, the kind of eyes that say, yes, we've definitely seen tourists faint before. Their rituals are ancient, deliberate, and profoundly rooted in community, which makes it even more hilarious that Silicon Valley later treated this like a shortcut to inspiration. The shamans sit in a semicircle around the fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow. There's a stillness about them, not the awkward, waiting for someone to speak stillness you get in a meeting room, but the kind that feels woven into the fabric of the forest itself. They don't rush, they don't multitask, they don't open a laptop and say, let's circle back. They simply exist with a level of grounded confidence that suggests they could diagnose your soul with one raised eyebrow. You notice the way they move, slow, deliberate, purposeful. Their hands prepare herbs and leaves with a practiced ease, like chefs who've memorized recipes older than empires. One shaman ties a small charm to your wrist, a woven thread embedded with tiny seeds. It smells faintly of smoke and sap. You briefly wonder if it's meant for protection, or if it's the rainforest version of labeling you beginner. Their chants rise and fall in mesmerizing waves, harmonizing with the insects, the wind, and your internal monologue, which is currently screaming, "Don't throw up, don't throw up." The shamans, of course, are completely unbothered. They've seen this ceremony unfold thousands of times. They've guided generations through the spirit realm, helped heal deep wounds, and watched countless outsiders dramatically overestimate their emotional readiness. You sit quietly, observing them. The shaman's clothing is hand-woven, adorned with symbols you can't decipher but instinctively feel the weight of. Their necklaces clack softly when they move. Feathers and beads rustle gently as they shift around the fire. Every detail tells a story, each piece connected to lineage, land, and memory. And meanwhile, you're sitting there in hiking boots and a shirt made from recycled water bottles thinking, I'm absolutely out of my depth. One of the healers kneels beside you and gently offers you a small bowl of herbs to smell. The aroma is earthy and sharp, like the forest itself has leaned over to give you a stern pep talk. Another taps your shoulder twice, a gesture that somehow conveys both reassurance and the subtle implication that you should probably calm down before embarrassing yourself in front of the spirits. The ceremony begins in earnest. Smoke wafts upward, curling like ethereal vines into the night sky. The shamans chant in rhythmic syllables that seem to vibrate straight into your sternum. Each sound feels intentional, like a key unlocking something ancient in the air around you. You try to follow along, but your version sounds more like someone dropped a spoon down a metal staircase. Still, something shifts. You feel the energy in the group, not in the exaggerated, theatrical way people describe on wellness retreats, but in a quiet, pulsing way, like the rainforest itself is exhaling with you. The shamans guide the ceremony not as performers, but as caretakers, tending to everyone with gentle touches, soft words, and occasional amused glances when someone sways a little too dramatically. A shaman places his hand on your shoulder, light, steady, grounding, and in that moment you realize that these rituals aren't just about visions or revelations, they're about connection to the land, to your ancestors, to the people beside you, to the parts of yourself you usually drown out with notifications and to-do lists. You glance around at the circle. People are breathing deeply, eyes closed, swaying gently. The shamans hum, guiding the current of the experience, and you can't help but marvel at how skillfully they navigate realms both seen and unseen, something your average tech executive would describe as soft skills while ignoring every spiritual implication. The ceremony stretches on, timeless and unhurried. You feel small, but not in a frightening way, more like a puzzle piece realizing where it fits. It's humbling, peaceful, and deeply funny to imagine how this sacred communal ritual will one day be repackaged as a productivity retreat for people who haven't touched grass since 2014. When the chanting softens and the night settles, the shamans look at you again with those same patient, knowing eyes, not judging, not expecting anything, just quietly acknowledging that you took a step into something bigger than yourself, and for once you actually let yourself feel it. When the shaman waves incense and calls the forest spirits, you realize you're in a place where nature isn't a backdrop, it's the boss. And unlike your manager at work, this boss does not care about your question 4 projections. The smoke drifts upward in swirling ribbons, carrying with it the scent of crushed leaves, tree resin, and something faintly sweet that you can't identify but assume might be older than your entire family line. The shaman's chant vibrates through the air, a sound so steady and resonant it feels like the trees themselves are humming along. You look around and finally understand. Nothing here is pretending. Nothing is ornamental. The rainforest isn't a prop for inspirational posters or a wallpaper background for your laptop. It's alive, in charge, and very aware that you're the guest. The ground beneath you is soft and uneven, cushioned with centuries of fallen leaves, roots, and tiny creatures going about their business. Instead of fluorescent lights, the canopy filters beams of moonlight that flicker like they're being dimmed by unseen hands. Every sound, A distant bird call, a chorus of insects, the rustle of a creature you hope is small, weaves into the atmosphere like part of a cosmic symphony. You suddenly realize how loud your life usually is. Emails buzzing, traffic droning, Slack messages multiplying like digital fruit flies. Here, the loudest things are your thoughts, and the forest seems to hear those too. The shaman flicks the incense toward you, tracing slow arcs in the air. You swear the forest reacts. A sudden breeze brushes your face, cool and damp, like the jungle is leaning in a little closer to inspect this new outsider, who still pronounces ayahuasca with mild uncertainty. You inhale, and every scent feels interconnected. Flowers, soil, water, roots, layers of aroma telling you, in their own quiet botanical language, that this place has no intention of adjusting to your comfort level. As the chanting continues, you sense movement where you didn't expect any. Shadows ripple between the trunks, leaves flutter without wind. Something shifts in the branches above you, not threatening, just observing. In the world you're used to, being seen usually involves surveillance cameras or co-workers walking by your desk while you're absolutely not online shopping. But here, being seen feels ancient, intentional, like the forest spirits want to know what you're made of before deciding whether to reveal anything at all. You try to sit taller, breathe deeper, act like you belong. It lasts 4 seconds. Then a beetle the size of a grape strolls across your foot like it owns the place, which it absolutely does. You flinch, and somewhere in the canopy, a bird lets out a noise that sounds suspiciously like laughter. The shaman begins speaking in a rhythmic cadence, telling stories of how the spirits guide, teach, warn, and occasionally prank those who wander too boldly. You listen, entranced, soaking in every syllable. These tales aren't metaphors here. They're history, they're maps, they're survival manuals written long before language had vowels. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds and smells wash over you. And in that stillness, something subtle happens. You feel a presence, not a ghostly horror movie presence, but a quiet awareness sliding into your space like a cat making itself comfortable. It's the forest again. Not speaking exactly, but acknowledging. You're small, but you're welcome for now. Your mind tries to categorize this experience, label it, file it neatly like a productivity app. Spiritual encounter, sensory hallucination, possible dehydration. But nothing fits. This isn't a place where logic gets the final say. This is a realm shaped by relationships. Plants to animals, animals to ancestors, ancestors to stars, stars to stories, stories to the living. You exhale slowly. The jungle exhales with you. And as you sit surrounded by spirits instead of spreadsheets, you finally understand why people travelled thousands of miles seeking this. It's not escapism, it's perspective. A reminder that the world is vast, alive, and beautifully uninterested in your quarterly performance review. Somewhere in the darkness, a branch cracks. A soft glow appears between the trees. You realize the ceremony is only beginning, and the spirits have decided to show you their world on their terms. Good luck. The cup touches your lips. It tastes like mud, bitterness, and emotional regret. As it slides down, you think, maybe enlightenment should taste better. Little do you know you're about to become very close friends with your subconscious and your bucket. You stare at the empty cup, trying to decide whether the aftertaste is more earthy or deeply personal betrayal. Around you, others sip the brew with knowing calm, as if they did not just willingly consume the liquid embodiment of a crisis. A shaman gently pats your shoulder, the universal gesture for, the fun part hasn't even started yet. At first, nothing happens. You sit politely, like someone waiting for a job interview to begin. You breathe deeply. You attempt to look introspective, even though the only thing on your mind is whether or not you should have eaten that banana beforehand. The night air presses warm and dense against your skin, and the crackling fire feels like it's staring at you, patient, expectant, slightly amused. Then your stomach twinges. Not a normal twinge. Not a maybe I had too much cheese earlier twinge. This one feels like your digestive system is gathering the staff for an emergency meeting. Your vision softens at the edges. The ground seems to inhale, and you suddenly understand why the bucket was placed so lovingly in front of you earlier. You grab it just in time. The purge, as they call it, begins. It is not glamorous. It is not poetic. If a nature documentary were filming you right now, the narrator would sigh deeply and say, "This is how the human faces its own hubris." The good news? The shamans and other participants treat this moment with deep reverence. This isn't an accident. It's part of the ritual, a symbolic release, a cleansing, a letting go. The bad news? Your soul appears to be exiting through your esophagus. Eventually the wave passes, leaving you shaky but oddly relieved. The jungle hums around you, indifferent to your suffering yet strangely comforting. Someone hands you water. Someone else nods in solidarity. Everyone here has purged before, spiritually, emotionally, physically. You're now part of a very exclusive club of people who have thrown up for cosmological reasons. And then it begins. Your body becomes weightless. The trees begin to shimmer. The shadows dance with the light in patterns that feel ancient and intentional. The air thickens, not in a suffocating way, but in a you're now operating on a different wavelength kind of way. Your heartbeat echoes like a drum. Your breath sounds like wind. And the bucket beside you seems to wink as if to say, "We'll meet again." You close your eyes, thinking it will help. It does not. Your subconscious immediately decides this is the perfect moment for a slideshow of memories you did not ask to revisit. There's your childhood. There's your teenage haircut. There's that one email you sent in 2014 that still keeps you up at night. They flow past you like ghosts wearing lanyards. But then something shifts. The discomfort fades. The fear loosens its grip. A warm, radiant sensation spreads from the center of your chest, upward and outward, like a lantern being lit inside you. Shapes form, not entirely visual, not entirely emotional, but something in between. Colors melt, reform, breathe. You see patterns that feel like mathematics having a spiritual awakening. Somewhere in the distance you swear you hear laughter, not mocking, but welcoming. A presence approaches, not a figure exactly, not a voice, more like an awareness brushing your shoulder, whispering, "There you are." It is familiar and strange all at once, like meeting the best version of yourself in a dream. The jungle responds as if in conversation, leaves rustling, insects humming in harmony, the fire cracking like punctuation. For the first time tonight, you stop resisting. You let the visions pull you deeper. You stop worrying about the bucket. You stop wondering if you're doing this correctly. You simply surrender to the process that thousands before you have surrendered to, a journey into the interior world that modern life rarely lets you visit. Hours pass in loops of insight, fear, humor, and awe. You meet corners of your mind that have been gathering dust for years. You laugh unexpectedly. You cry softly. You learn things you didn't know you already knew. And when the visions finally soften, when the colors drift away like fireflies going home, you find yourself lying on the forest floor, breathing steadily, heart calm. The shaman reappears, smiling gently. "You did well," he says, which is hilarious, given your earlier performance with the bucket. But he's right. You took the step. You tasted the brew, and nothing in your life will ever look quite the same. Again, the forest dissolves, colours whisper, geometry suddenly has opinions, everything around you feels ancient, cosmic, and surprisingly judgmental. Congratulations! You've entered the realm people now use to justify quitting their job to start a cryptocurrency. At first, you try to process the situation logically, which is adorable, because logic has already packed its bags and left your brain. The trees are gone, replaced by swirling fractal tunnels that seem both infinite and oddly personal, like your childhood bedroom was redesigned by a mathematician with emotional issues. Shapes fold into themselves, then unfold into new shapes that are definitely looking at you, even though they don't technically have eyes. You think about waving hello, but your arm dissolves into a shower of glittering particles that politely decline to follow basic anatomy. You float, or at least you think you do. Gravity seems optional here, like a subscription service you forgot to renew. Your body feels distant. Not gone exactly, just not particularly interested in participating. You're now a gently confused consciousness drifting through cosmic IKEA, surrounded by structures that feel both ancient and slightly overpriced. A shimmering tunnel pulses in front of you, inviting but also radiating the energy of someone who would absolutely judge your Spotify playlists. You drift toward it, because what else are you doing tonight? As you enter, the tunnel vibrates with a low hum that feels like it's scanning your soul for malware. Colours shift with each breath you take. Patterns bloom in impossible symmetry. If geometry has never yelled at you before, congratulations, tonight is the night. Suddenly, a figure coalesces in the distance. Not a humanoid figure, more like an abstract constellation wearing a robe of light itself. It floats closer, radiating wisdom, serenity, and the distinct vibe of someone who is about to tell you something profound that you absolutely will not understand. Hello, the figure seems to say not with words, but with a sound that feels like a warm breeze blowing through your skull. You try to respond, but what comes out of you is more like a vibrating hum mixed with a memory of your high school locker combination. The figure nods solemnly, as if you've shared something deeply insightful which is generous. Around you, more shapes appear, glowing grids, spiraling orbs, floating prisms that tilt in your direction like curious cats made of algebra. Some of them show you fragments of your life, your first heartbreak, your last bad haircut, that one time you microwave something you really shouldn't have. Every image feels symbolic, even if it's just you dropping a taco in 2018. Then the realm shifts again. You're now standing, or hovering, or both, in a vast expanse of shimmering sand that sparkles like stardust. The dunes move without wind, reshaping themselves into symbols you almost recognize. Each one pulses with a kind of ancient authority. You sense they're asking you questions, big ones, cosmic ones, the kind philosophers contemplate for decades. But the only thing your mind can produce is, did I leave the stove on? A giant luminous serpent slithers across the dunes. Its scales gleam in impossible colours, each one shifting with your heartbeat. Instead of fear, you feel a deep instinctive familiarity, like this creature has been waiting for you since before your birth. It circles you once, twice, then taps your forehead gently with its nose. Immediately, your brain begins downloading insights at a speed you're emotionally unprepared for. You see interconnectedness. You see the universe breathing. You see why your aunt always said Mercury was in retrograde. You understand everything for roughly 3 seconds. Then it slips away like a dream you forgot mid-sentence. The serpent gives you a look that can only be described as, bless your heart. Finally, after what feels like lifetimes, the realm softens, the colours fade, the figures dissolve, the geometry files a complaint against you with cosmic HR. You drift downward, gently, slowly, like a feather descending through warm air. The serpent's voice echoes in your mind as the world blurs. You did fine, which is the interdimensional equivalent of, you tried your best, sweetie. And just like that, the spirit realm releases you, a little wiser, a little shaken, and definitely not ready to start a cryptocurrency, but now fully aware why other people think they should. Welcome back. A shimmering jaguar appears, staring straight into your soul as if it knows about that one very embarrassing thing you did in 2011. This majestic creature is your guide, something tech bros will later describe as my brand alignment mentor. It steps out of the glowing foliage with the kind of confidence only a cosmic apex predator can have. Every inch of its fur ripples with bioluminescent patterns shifting like constellations rearranging themselves just to make you feel underdressed. Its eyes, enormous, golden, unblinking, seem to hold centuries of knowledge, several cosmic secrets, and maybe also the memory of you tripping in public that one time. You freeze. Not because you're afraid, but because you have absolutely no idea what the etiquette is for greeting an interdimensional jaguar. Do you bow? Do you wave? Do you say nice to meet you even though this thing definitely met your soul before you learned how to tie your shoes? The jaguar tilts its head, sizing you up, as if deciding whether guiding you through the spirit realm is worth interrupting its evening plans. Its tail swishes once, slicing through the neon air. The movement sends ripples of energy across the landscape, and suddenly the ground beneath you hums with anticipation. You get the sense that the jaguar doesn't just live in this realm, it moderates it. Without warning, it steps closer, not threateningly, but with a regal sort of authority, like a king inspecting a very confused intern. You can feel its breath, warm, strangely floral, brush against your face, and then, as if speaking directly into the folds of your mind, a voice echoes, "Follow," not suggestion, not an invitation, a statement. The jaguar turns and pads silently across a bridge of floating stones that didn't exist 5 seconds ago. Each step triggers a bloom of radiant light under its paws. You scramble after it, unsure whether falling behind would result in cosmic punishment or merely mild disappointment from a giant glowing cat. As you follow, the realm reshapes itself. Trees unfurl into fractal spirals, rivers float upward like ribbons, stars drift down from the sky to circle your feet like curious pets. Through all of this, the jaguar moves effortlessly, blending into the shifting landscape as though the world adapts to it, not the other way around. Every so often, it glances back at you, that same knowing, slightly, judgmental stare, checking to make sure you haven't wandered off to investigate a shiny object, which feels like something you would absolutely do here. Each glance feels like a life review from a creature who has already skimmed your emotional resume. Eventually you reach a clearing where the air thickens with quiet. The jaguar sits, tail curled around its paws, and gestures toward a pulsing orb in the center. It radiates both warmth and dread, like a cosmic version of opening an email marked per my last message. You sit beside the orb. The jaguar watches patiently, encouraging you in the silent, terrifying way only a large predator can. Images begin to flicker inside the orb. Moments from your life, choices, memories, patterns you didn't know had patterns. The jaguar nudges you gently whenever you try to look away, insisting you face what rises. It's less therapy session and more all of your subconscious content in one binge-watchable season. You see mistakes, you see triumphs, you see cringeworthy phases you thought you'd buried. But you also see resilience, humour, tenderness, parts of yourself you rarely acknowledge. The jaguar's gaze softens, proud, as if saying, "See, you're more than your mess." When the visions fade, the orb dissolves into stardust. You exhale, shaky but lighter. The jaguar stands, brushing against you in a gesture that feels almost affectionate. Its fur radiates warmth, grounding you back into your body. Then, with a final look, equal parts teacher, guardian, and someone who has definitely muted you in their cosmic group chat once before, the jaguar steps backward into the shimmering foliage and vanishes. You're alone again. But this time, you don't feel lost, because now you know, somewhere out there in the neon geometry of the spirit world, a glowing jaguar believes in you. You come back gasping, sweaty and humbled, like you've just wrestled God in a sauna. Everyone around you nods knowingly. This was a rite of passage, a spiritual contract, not a hack. You blink hard as the spirit realm dissolves around you like a soap bubble popping in slow motion. The neon jungles fade first, then the shimmering geometry, then that one very opinionated serpent who definitely had notes about your emotional development. In their place, the real jungle creeps back into focus, humid, buzzing, and decidedly less glamorous than whatever interdimensional VIP lounge you were just launched through. Your body feels wrong. Too heavy. Too warm. Too human. Coming back into it is like putting on jeans straight out of the dryer. Familiar, but also weirdly punitive. You wiggle your fingers. You can't quite remember how hands work, but you trust the knowledge will return eventually. The ground beneath you is moist and reassuringly solid. A mosquito lands on your arm and you nearly cry with relief. Nothing says, "Welcome back to Earth," like a bug attempting to drink your blood. Around you, the others sit, motionless in their own little bubbles of contemplation. Some are still smiling, some are crying softly. One guy definitely thinks he's still a fern. The shamans move between everyone with practiced grace, offering water, gentle touches, and the spiritual equivalent of a thumbs up. Their eyes say, "You lived. Good job." You take the water they offer. It tastes incredible, crisp, clean, absolutely not made of cosmic insight. Your throat is dry, as if you've spent the last hour screaming into the void, which you probably did. You feel your pulse returning to a rhythm that isn't trying to sync with the heartbeat of the universe anymore. For a moment, you just breathe. Deep, shaky breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth, standard issue biology, nothing divine. And yet it feels like the first real breath you've taken in years. Your mind tries to piece things together, but it's like sorting through a messy desktop of unsaved files and cryptic folder names. The visions were profound, at least they felt profound. Now they feel like dream fragments slipping through your fingers. You try to recall the cosmic lesson the serpent whispered. You remember shapes. Maybe there was something about forgiveness or hydration. It's unclear. The universe needs better note-taking features. Still, a lingering softness sits in your chest, a sense of perspective, a quiet clarity, even if you can't articulate it. You realize that whatever just happened wasn't designed to be captured in a LinkedIn post about unlocking your highest potential. It wasn't slick, it wasn't marketable, it was messy and uncomfortable and deeply, wildly human. One of the shamans places a hand on your back. The touch is light, grounding. He murmurs something low and melodic. Not instructions, not advice, just reassurance. You don't need to understand the words to feel the meaning settle into you. You're here. It's enough. Slowly, the world continues knitting itself back, together. Sound returns first. The chirping insects, the crackling fire, someone quietly blowing their nose in the distance. Then sensation, the cool night air, the weight of your body, the odd realization that your legs have fallen asleep. Finally, thought returns, stumbling back in like it left its keys behind. You look around and catch the eyes of another participant. They give you a tired, sympathetic nod, a look that says, "We both visited the cosmic customer service department tonight, didn't we?" You nod back. A small community forms in that moment, held together by nothing more than shared bewilderment. Eventually, as your heartbeat steadies and your sweat cools, the shaman invites the group to sit closer to the fire. You shuffle forward, grateful for warmth that doesn't come from spiritual combustion. The flames flicker gently, completely uninterested in your psychological rebirth. You sit there, staring into the fire, feeling the fatigue settle deep in your bones. Despite everything, you're okay. You survived the journey, the purge, the revelations, the geometry with opinions. And now, in the quiet flicker of the real world, you finally understand. Returning isn't the end of the experience. It's the beginning of understanding it. Barely. But enough for tonight. Centuries later, explorers wander into the rainforest with notebooks, wide eyes, and absolutely no idea what they're doing. They watch the ceremonies, ask invasive questions, and promptly misinterpret everything. The grand tradition of Western anthropology is born. They arrive dressed in heavy coats and boots completely unsuited for the Amazon, sweating profusely and insisting they're quite used to humidity back home, which is absolutely not true. Their hats are too large, their maps are too small, and their confidence is far greater than their understanding. They stumble through vines and roots, swatting at insects that have been politely minding their own business for millennia. When they finally reach a village, they greet the locals with a mix of fascination and theatrical politeness. The shamans observe them silently, the way one might observe a raccoon that has wandered indoors, curious, mildly concerned, but ultimately resigned. The explorers immediately pull out notebooks and start scribbling. They write down plant names incorrectly. They sketch ceremonial tools with the enthusiasm of children drawing dinosaurs. They whisper things like, "remarkable, quite primitive," while being unable to start a campfire without assistance. The villagers exchange glances, a quiet, shared acknowledgement that these newcomers have no idea what they've stepped into. When the first ceremony begins, the Westerners sit rigidly, trying to appear respectful while also trying not to inhale too much smoke. They take notes obsessively. They ask questions mid-chant. They lean over to one another and whisper things like, "Do you think they're summoning something?" in the exact tone one might use at a magic show. The shaman waves incense, singing the ancient Icaros passed down through generations. The explorers record the sound phonetically, butcher the melody in their transcription, and then conclude confidently that it must symbolize fertility. It does not. But at this point, accuracy is optional. When someone takes a ceremonial sip of ayahuasca, the explorers lean in as if witnessing a rare celestial event. They jot down observations like subject appears disoriented, unaware that the participant is currently meeting their ancestors and also questioning whether trees have opinions. Eventually, one of the explorers volunteers to participate. He approaches the brew with the solemnity of a man tasting wine he can't afford. He takes one sip, turns pale, and realizes too late that this is not wine. Within minutes, he is hunched over a bucket, loudly confronting every decision he's made in the last 20 years. The villagers nod sympathetically. They've seen this before. After the purge, the explorer sits trembling under a blanket. His colleagues gather around him and whisper, "He's transcending." The shaman nearby gently shakes his head. The man is not transcending. He is simply regretting breakfast. When the visions hit, the explorer begins narrating them aloud in dramatic fashion. "I see a great serpent," he gasps. "It speaks in riddles." The shaman nods politely, knowing full well the serpent is probably just trying to ask him to calm down. The explorer continues, "I must write this down." He reaches for his notebook with trembling hands and proceeds to record a wildly inaccurate account of the experience that future historians will sadly take seriously. Over the following weeks, the Westerners attempt to categorize everything they see. They measure tools with rulers. They make charts comparing ceremonial songs to Gregorian chants. They draw maps of the rainforest that are wildly incorrect. One features a river that does not exist. Another labels a termite mound as possible sacred monument. Yet despite all the errors, something shifts. Their tone softens. Their writing grows less clinical and more reverent. They begin to recognize the depth, complexity, and sophistication of the culture they once viewed as primitive. They learn to sit more quietly. They learn to ask fewer questions. They learn that not everything is meant to be explained, charted, or footnoted. And the shamans, they simply continue their work. Patient, observant, amused. Because long before anthropology, before notebooks, before the need to turn everything into data, they already understood something the newcomers would spend decades trying to articulate. The rainforest is not a subject, it's a teacher, and it doesn't give extra credit for enthusiasm. Scientists isolate DMT and say things like, fascinating, and oh dear God, what is happening? Labs fill with swirling diagrams, confused researchers, and at least one intern who definitely took too much. The 20th century was a wild time for science. Every decade felt like humanity was collectively opening a new mystery box labelled probably dangerous, open anyway. Penicillin, nuclear fission, Velcro, breakthroughs arrived one after another. So when researchers stumbled upon N-dimethyltryptamine, they reacted with a deeply professional mixture of scientific curiosity and mild panic. The first step was isolating the compound, which they approached with all the seriousness of people who definitely did not expect the universe to bite back. White lab coats hovered over microscopes, glassware clinked dramatically, and clipboards filled with notes like subject reported encountering entity, possibly hallucination, possibly accountant. Soon they discovered something unsettling. DMT wasn't rare, it was everywhere, in plants, in animals, in humans. This revelation caused several scientists to sit down abruptly and rethink their career choices, because it is one thing to study a psychedelic molecule. It is another thing entirely to realize your body might be a part-time psychedelic factory. Research papers flooded journals, full of serious-sounding sentences masking absolute existential horror. Lines like, "The pineal gland may produce endogenous DMT, which is academic code for, we don't know why your brain might be doing this, and frankly, we're scared." Funding increased. So did the number of researchers quietly asking each other, have you tried it? The answer was often yes, though very few admitted it on official paperwork. Experiments in controlled environments began. Volunteers reclined on stiff medical beds while scientists hovered nearby with clipboards, ready to document whatever cosmic nonsense erupted. The volunteers were usually calm at first, breathing deeply, ready to contribute to human knowledge. Then the DMT hit. Suddenly, they were describing tunnels of light, vibrating structures, and a being made of geometry, who told me I should call my mother more. Scientists scribbled fiercely, unsure whether they were recording groundbreaking neurological phenomena or the world's strangest therapy session. Some participants laughed. Some cried. One man tried to shake hands with the air. Another sat up and declared, "I've seen the blueprint of reality, and it's surprisingly inefficient." One particularly memorable subject calmly announced he had become a cosmic librarian, which raised questions no one in the room felt qualified to address. The lab intern, the one who accidentally took too much, spent 45 minutes trying to explain to a potted plant why capitalism was failing. The plant, to its credit, remained supportive. Despite the chaos, real progress was being made. Scientists realized DMT induced its effects almost instantly when smoked or injected, lasted mere minutes, and produced visions as intense as multi-hour psychedelic journeys. This baffled researchers. How could the human mind generate such elaborate worlds so quickly? Did we all have entire universes stored somewhere in our neurons? And if so, who put them there? Debates broke out across conferences, some scholarly and polite, others resembling academic cage matches. Neuroscientists argued with psychologists. Psychologists argued with philosophers. Philosophers argued with themselves. No one could quite agree whether DMT opened a door into the subconscious or opened a door into something that wasn't internal at all. Meanwhile, outside the academic world, rumours spread. Stories whispered through counterculture circles. Portals, aliens, spirit guides, cosmic truths accessible in 10-minute intervals. This only made scientists more nervous. Nothing terrifies a researcher like a hippie using the word interdimensional unironically. By the 1970s, governments cracked down on psychedelic research, citing public safety, moral concerns, and unofficially, the growing fear that someone was going to meet God during a study and ask him to peer review their thesis. Funding dried up. Many labs were forced to shutter their work. The once busy research facilities fell silent, leaving behind only dusty glassware and the memory of one intern who briefly believed he was a tree. But the questions remained, hanging in scientific limbo, humming softly, waiting for a future generation brave, or bored, enough to pick them back up. Because once DMT entered the world of science, nothing was ever quite the same. Not for the researchers, not for the studies, and definitely not for the intern. Suddenly, everyone wants their consciousness expanded. College campuses become kaleidoscopes. Musicians see colours when they sneeze, and DMT quietly becomes the "oh, you think LSD is strong? How adorable of the era." It happens fast. One moment society is buttoned up, polite and deeply allergic to discussing feelings, and the next it's wearing tie-dye, quoting poetry and enthusiastically dissolving the boundary between self and universe. You watch as the cultural ground lurches beneath everyone's feet. Students read philosophy under trees that definitely weren't breathing before, and basement apartments glow with black lights and vibes. Psychedelics aren't just a trend, they're a revolution wrapped in a hemp poncho. LSD takes centre stage, of course. It's bold, dramatic, and lasts long enough for someone to grow a beard mid-trip. Everyone is talking about consciousness, perception, transcendence. Big words for people who haven't done laundry in 3 weeks. Timothy Leary becomes a household name. The Beatles go from "I want to hold your hand" to "I saw a blue elephant teach me about love in record time." And somewhere in the background, quietly polishing its claws, sits DMT. Unlike LSD, DMT doesn't come announcing itself with 8 to 12-hour cosmic marathons. No, DMT is quick, ruthless, and profoundly uninterested in whether you've cleared your schedule. It shows up like a cosmic drill sergeant. You want enlightenment? You have 5 minutes. Let's go. People start referring to it with a mixture of awe and terror. Some whisper, it's like being shot out of a cannon into God's living room. Others describe it as a brief but meaningful hostage situation with the universe. Word spreads quickly, especially among musicians, artists, and those philosophy majors who already suspected reality was flimsy at best. You wander into a living room filled with incense, lava lamps, and people sitting cross-legged on shag carpeting. Someone puts on experimental jazz. Someone else turns off all the lights. A volunteer inhales DMT from a glass pipe, holds their breath, and slumps backward like a puppet whose strings were cut. Their eyes flicker as if they're watching galaxies rearrange themselves behind their eyelids. Everyone else leans in, whispering. "Where are they?" someone asks. In there, another whispers, pointing vaguely at the ceiling as though the spirit realm is hiding in the rafters. After a few minutes, or hours, depending on who's counting, the volunteer gasps awake, wide-eyed, looking like they've just returned from a cosmic board meeting with entities who are not impressed with humanity's performance review. "What did you see?" someone asks breathlessly. The volunteer stares into the middle distance. "Patterns," they whisper. "Lots of patterns." And a being made of triangles who kept insisting I hydrate. As the decade rolls on, the psychedelic scene grows bolder and weirder. Universities quietly fund research. Psychologists explore altered states. Mystics blend ancient traditions with modern enthusiasm. Bands write songs whose lyrics contain fewer words and more metaphysical implications. Spiritual seekers travel to rainforests, deserts, mountaintops, searching for something, anything, to stitch meaning into the fraying edges of modern life. Meanwhile, governments panic. Nothing terrifies an institution like a population suddenly asking, why do we do things this way? Laws tighten, research gets shut down. Public fear campaigns warn people that a single psychedelic experience could turn you into a bearded mystic living in a van. Many researchers pack up their equipment reluctantly, feeling the door to a promising frontier slam shut. Yet the culture doesn't forget. You can feel it. A soft hum beneath the noise of the world, an undercurrent of curiosity. The 60s didn't kill psychedelics. They made them legends. DMT especially becomes a whispered relic. People trade stories about it with reverence usually reserved for rare artifacts. My cousin met an elf. My roommate visited another dimension. A friend of a friend saw the birth of the universe and came back craving cereal. As you stand in the haze of incense and patchouli, watching a room full of people stare knowingly at a poster of fractals, you realize something important. Society didn't just experiment with psychedelics. It cracked open a door, and once a culture gets even a fleeting glimpse of the infinite, it never fully goes back to sleep. Governments panic, politely lose their minds, and ban everything that makes colours too interesting. DMT disappears into basements, attics, and questionable beanbag chairs across the country. Almost overnight, the psychedelic boom slams into a wall. Not a physical one, but a legislative one, which is significantly less dramatic but somehow far more exhausting. Politicians who've never taken anything stronger than cough syrup decide that the nation's youth must be protected from their own curiosity. Committees are formed, papers are written, discussions are held in windowless rooms where no one has ever listened to a rock album all the way through. Suddenly, substances that once inspired art, research, and the occasional existential meltdown are now illegal, outlawed, demonized, painted as tiny chemical devils hiding in tie-dye shirts. The public is warned that psychedelic users are moments away from leaping out of windows casting spells or joining a drum circle, all equally alarming to certain senators. The crackdown is swift. Research funding evaporates like spilled alcohol on a hot day. Laboratories, once buzzing with eager grad students and half-functional equipment, fall silent. Papers gather dust. Researchers sigh, look longingly at their shelves of samples, and pivot to studying something much more politically safe, like soil composition. But DMT doesn't disappear, not really. Humans are, after all, notoriously stubborn when told not to investigate the strange and mystical. People adapt. Instead of universities, the research moves to living rooms. Instead of official studies, it becomes whispered conversations in college dorms and music festivals. DMT retreats into the shadows, not because it wants to hide, but because someone shoved it there. You find yourself imagining the era, dimly lit basements, filled with mismatched furniture, incense burning next to a lava lamp that may or may not be a fire hazard. A group of people sits cross-legged on the floor sharing stories about a friend's cousin's roommate who totally saw an interdimensional being last week, or maybe it was just the cat. The energy shifts from public exploration to underground folklore. The beanbag chairs are very questionable. They smell faintly of spilled juice, patchouli, and regret. But they're also sanctuary, soft, lumpy portals into the uncharted realm of clandestine psychedelic culture. Every household seems to have one person, the chemist, the guru, the guy who bought a book on alchemy and now won't stop talking about consciousness. The language of the era becomes coded. People speak in metaphors. Going on a journey does not mean taking a bus. Meeting the machine elves does not mean the neighbour's kids. And a very intense 10 minutes is understood by everyone in the room without further explanation. Meanwhile, the broader culture shifts into a safe beige normalcy. Anti-drug campaigns shout dramatic warnings. Television specials feature very serious men in suits discussing the dangers of mind alteration, as if the human mind weren't already altering itself every time someone hears a breakup song. Schools hold assemblies where teachers explain that one psychedelic trip will ruin your life forever, which is an impressive oversimplification. But underneath the fear, the Prohibition does something unexpected. It mythologizes psychedelics. When something is forbidden, it becomes alluring. When something is hidden, it becomes powerful. DMT shifts from a research subject to a whispered legend. By the early 1980s, it's practically a ghost, rarely seen, often referenced, always dramatic, a rumour, a relic, a secret handshake among those who have brushed against the edges of infinity. The few who use it describe their experiences with hushed reverence, like monks discussing visions they're not sure they're supposed to have had. And yet through this long winter, this era of bans, fear, and misguided public service announcements, one truth quietly survives. Curiosity isn't so easily outlawed. Even in the shadows, even beneath the weight of prohibition, people keep asking questions. People keep searching. People keep sensing that somewhere just beyond the veil, something extraordinary is waiting. The culture goes cold, but the ember remains. And sooner or later, someone always comes along to breathe it back to flame. Somewhere in Palo Alto, a man wearing allbirds takes his first sip of ayahuasca at a corporate retreat hosted in a luxury yurt. The spirits immediately cringe. The yurt itself is enormous, the size of a suburban living room, but decorated like someone Googled authentic shamanic decor and then bought everything in the top 3 search results. There are Himalayan salt lamps, bamboo mats, essential oil diffusers, working overtime, and an enormous gong in the corner that someone will absolutely hit at the wrong moment. Faux fur throws lie across beanbag chairs arranged in a circle, each labelled with a name card printed in a minimalist font. Ethan, Chad, Brett, MBA. You sit among them, the only person here who seems remotely aware that a yurt is not a traditional Amazonian structure. Everyone is buzzing with excitement, but not spiritual excitement. Startup excitement. The kind that leads people to say things like, "I heard this is great for productivity," or "My therapist said I need to stop micromanaging my employees, so I'm hoping this clears that up." The corporate facilitator enters. He wears linen pants and a wooden bead necklace that still has a price tag tucked under one bead. He greets everyone with a serene smile that is entirely too polished. His business card tucked into his pocket reads Shamanic Leadership Optimization Coach. You can feel your soul trying to roll its eyes. The ayahuasca is poured into ceramic mugs that look like they came from an artisanal pottery studio in Oakland. One of the executives sniffs his cup and asks, "Is this gluten-free?" Another wonders if he can expense this retreat as a wellness write-off. The facilitator simply nods, encouraging everyone to set an intention, which results in 25 adults murmuring things like, "Unlock innovation, scale compassion, and finally understand blockchain. You take a sip. The brew tastes just as wretched in Palo Alto as it does in the Amazon. Earthy, bitter, unapologetically hostile. But instead of sitting on a jungle floor, you're in a temperature-controlled yurt with ambient EDM playing softly from hidden speakers. It's an experience. Within minutes, the room shifts. One man begins crying because he suddenly feels the burden of leadership. Another reaches toward the ceiling, claiming he's downloading ancestral data. A third whispers, "I can see the UI of my soul." Someone in the back is muttering apologies to a houseplant. It is absolute spiritual chaos. The facilitator moves around the room with an air of calm, although his eyes clearly scream, "This is not what the manual prepared me for." He gives people reassuring pats on the shoulder, saying things like, "Trust the process," while the spirits of the Amazon look on in disbelief, wondering how this became their job. You look toward the corner of the yurt and swear you see a shimmering jaguar spirit face-palming. The visions intensify. A programmer begins chanting in binary. A marketing executive declares herself a reincarnated Peruvian priestess, even though her name is Kelly and she grew up in Cleveland. One man tries to negotiate with the glowing serpent he sees, offering stock options in exchange for wisdom. The spirits, flawed by the audacity, simply stare. Then comes the purge. Instead of buckets, the retreat provides stylish woven baskets. They are not prepared. Nothing strains the limits of modern interior, designed quite like a group of tech workers discovering cosmic humility at high velocity. Eventually the energy settles. People lie back, breathing deeply, murmuring revelations such as, "I need to call my mother, I should stop making interns cry, and I must pivot my entire business model." The facilitator nods sagely as if this were all intentional, but underneath the absurdity, you sense something else, something faintly genuine. For the first time in their adult lives, these people are quiet. They're not calculating, strategizing, or refreshing email. They're just sitting with themselves, and it's uncomfortable, but also strangely tender. The spirit softens slightly. Maybe even the most relentlessly optimized souls deserve a chance to expand. As the retreat comes to a close, the group gathers for closing reflections. Someone says they achieved clarity. Someone else says they realized money isn't everything. Someone else asks if there's a certificate of completion. You walk out of the yurt into the crisp Palo Alto evening air. A Tesla rolls by, a drone buzzes overhead, and you can't help but smile. Because spirituality has officially collided with Silicon Valley, and it did not go smoothly. But it went exactly as hilariously beautifully human as you expected. Instead of addressing burnout, tech workers decide that tiny doses of psychedelics during stand-up meetings will solve everything. You watch as someone attempts enlightenment between calendar alerts. It starts innocently enough. Someone posts an article in the team Slack about optimizing cognitive flow through microdosing. Within hours, half the company is swirling with excitement, and the other half is pretending not to be. No one wants to seem uncool in a world where productivity is treated like a competitive sport. Soon, tiny amber bottles begin appearing on desks next to ergonomic keyboards and overpriced kombucha. The first experiment happens during a Monday morning stand-up. Everyone logs onto Zoom, bleary-eyed, clutching coffee, ready to recite their usual report, what they finished yesterday, what they're doing today, and what emotional baggage they're carrying into the new week. But today, they've all taken just a little something, not enough to trip, but enough to unlock potential, according to the productivity influencer who convinced them this was necessary. You watch as the meeting begins. The project manager speaks first. Her smile is a little too wide. "I feel extremely present," she says, staring into the camera with the intensity of someone trying to telepathically merge with their team. No one knows how to respond. Someone types same lol into the chat. Then it spreads. A software engineer attempts to explain his current task, but instead drifts into a long monologue about how code is actually a metaphor for human consciousness. The UX designer nods vigorously, taking notes that look suspiciously like doodles of spirals. A data analyst begins, crying because the spreadsheet is beautiful today. Calendar alerts chime repeatedly, reminders of deadlines, feedback sessions, performance reviews, but no one notices. Everyone is too busy having tiny revelations about the interconnectedness of microservices architecture. Meanwhile, the team lead sits quietly in his box on the screen, staring at his hands as if he's only just noticed they have fingerprints. As days pass, the trend only escalates. People talk openly about journeying at work the way others talk about lunch breaks. Someone brings in a mushroom-shaped lamp. Someone else brings in actual mushrooms. Not the fun kind. Just shiitake they found at Whole Foods, but still symbolic. The office fridge fills with wellness drinks promising clarity, alignment, and the gentle unlocking of your infinite potential through sustainably sourced botanicals. Work becomes strange. One afternoon, a junior developer, mid-microdose, attempts to refactor a piece of code but becomes distracted by the emotional arc of the variable names. Another employee decides to rename all her folders after mythological archetypes. The IT department discovers someone has scheduled a recurring 2-hour meeting titled Staring at Clouds and Considering My Role in the Universe. Yet somehow, morale is high. People feel lighter, more creative, more open. The only real downside is that no one is entirely sure what the company actually accomplished this quarter. In the break room, you observe a group discussing their dosages with the hushed seriousness of medieval monks debating theology. I only take 0.1 grams, someone says. It's just enough to rewire my relationship with productivity. Another replies, I take a little more because it makes spreadsheets feel like collaborative storytelling experiences. And while they speak, their phones buzz constantly, vibrating with reminders, Slack messages and unanswered emails. The great cosmic irony. This entire movement sprouted not from a desire to understand themselves, but from a desire to work harder without melting down. Instead of resting, setting boundaries, or confronting burnout head-on, they simply tried to outsmart it chemically. The modern equivalent of putting a tiny inspirational sticker on a collapsing bridge. Still, something unexpected happens. In these small doses of introspection, in these fleeting glimmers of self-awareness, people begin noticing things. The tension in their shoulders, the exhaustion in their eyes, the fact that when someone says, "We're a family here," it sounds more like a warning than a perk. One afternoon, in a rare moment of silence during a stand-up, a designer blurts out, "Why are we like this? Why don't we just take an actual break?" The room freezes. The question hangs in the air like forbidden magic. People exchange glances, cautious, hopeful, terrified. Maybe the enlightenment isn't in the microdose. Maybe it's in finally admitting they need rest. You sit there, watching this revelation ripple across a room filled with Allbirds and overactive calendars. The microdosing may not have fixed their burnout, but it cracked open a window just wide enough for the truth to float through. No amount of optimized serotonin can replace the radical act of simply being human. A software engineer quits his job, grows a mustache, buys a poncho, and starts charging $900 per ceremony. The jaguar spirit considers legal action. It always begins the same way. Burnout meets a midlife crisis in a co-working space. Our software engineer, let's call him Derek, stares at his dual monitors, watching the spinning beach ball of doom, and realizes that somewhere between sprint planning and his 7th oat milk latte, his soul quietly filed a resignation letter. He needs meaning. He needs purpose. He needs something poncho-shaped. So Derek sells his equity, empties his savings into a suitcase full of artisanal crystals and flies to the rainforest for a 2-week retreat. He returns transformed, or at least wearing more necklaces. His co-workers barely recognize him. His LinkedIn headline now reads, "Engineer to Visionary Guide in Psychedelic Leadership Pathways." He begins referring to dessert as medicine. The transformation escalates quickly. He rents a loft in a renovated warehouse district and decorates it with patterned rugs, succulents, and a single massive gong that echoes through the entire building. He starts posting softly lit selfies with captions like, "Healing is not linear, but your light is infinite." People alarmingly start following him. Within a month, he has a wait list. The cost, $900 per ceremony. The vibe? Etsy meets astral projection. You attend one of his sessions purely out of anthropological curiosity. Inside the loft, the lights are dim, the air thick with Palo Santo, and soft drumming music plays from a Bluetooth speaker hidden under a decorative basket. Derek greets you, wearing a poncho that definitely cost more than your car insurance. His mustache twitches with spiritual gravitas. He speaks softly, as if afraid of waking the cosmic toddler that lives behind the veil. "Welcome, traveller," he whispers, "even though you definitely took an Uber here." His followers gather in a circle, a mixture of stressed executives, influencers recovering from their 4th burnout, and one guy who seems to be here because he heard there might be free snacks. Everyone sits on floor cushions embroidered with symbols Derek bought online after Googling ancient patterns that look wise. Then Derek begins the ceremony. He waves a smudge stick around like he's trying to shoo away mediocre quarterly earnings. He calls upon the spirits of the jungle, mispronouncing half their names. He beats the drum with the stiff enthusiasm of someone who practiced exactly twice. With each chant, the jaguar spirit grows increasingly concerned. At one point, you swear you hear a cosmic sigh. The medicine is poured, a brew that is definitely not ayahuasca, but something Derek describes as energetically adjacent. It tastes like expired tea mixed with regret. You sip politely. Within minutes, someone claims they can see their past lives. Another says they're chatting with an ancestor who looks suspiciously like their barista. Derek nods gravely at each revelation. His moustache radiates approval. Then, halfway through the ceremony, something unexpected happens. People actually begin opening up. Stress melts. Shoulders drop. Someone admits they haven't taken a real day off in 6 years. Someone else finally cries about a breakup they pretended didn't hurt. The room fills with that rare atmosphere Silicon Valley almost never witnesses. Emotional honesty without performance metrics. Which is hilarious, because Derek absolutely thinks he's responsible for all of this. He moves around the circle, tapping foreheads gently, declaring it activation. He whispers affirmations he found on Pinterest. He tells someone their aura is pivoting beautifully, whatever that means. His clients adore him. The jaguar spirit, watching all of this from the astral plane, is considering contacting its lawyer. But here's the twist. Even though Derek is mostly winging it, even though his poncho is cultural appropriation in fabric form, even though the universe did not ask him to do any of this, something real happens in these sessions, not because he's a guru, not because he's channeling cosmic energy, but because people are desperate for connection, silence, care, and a moment not dictated by calendar notifications. At the end of the night, the loft glows softly. Candles flicker. The city hums outside. People leave lighter than they arrived, whispering gratitude and promising to return. Derek stands in the center of the room, proud, serene, and completely unaware that the jaguar spirit is still filing paperwork. And you walk out realizing that the rise of the tech shaman was never about enlightenment. It was about people trying, in all the wrong and strangely endearing ways, to remember what it feels like to be human. Venture capitalists begin discussing scalable spiritual solutions. Someone uses the phrase monetizing transcendence. You briefly consider leaving Earth. It starts innocently. One investor returns from a retreat in Peru wearing a bracelet made of seeds and an expression that suggests he has seen the spreadsheet behind the universe. He strolls into a boardroom, sips his antioxidant smoothie, and casually mentions that ayahuasca completely restructured my internal workflow. Within a week, half of Sand Hill Road is Googling how to invest in enlightenment. Suddenly, ancient spiritual medicine becomes the hottest pitch deck topic of the quarter. The conference rooms fill with jargon. Entrepreneurs throw around phrases like disruption of the inner self, synergistic shamanic ecosystems, and unlocking user attention through ego, dissolution. No one knows what any of it means, but everyone nods thoughtfully because no one wants to look spiritually underfunded. A founder stands in front of a whiteboard giving a presentation titled Ayahuasca 2.0 – Scaling Consciousness. The slide deck includes graphs comparing revenue projections to chakra alignment. One slide simply reads, "The future is vibrational" in bold gradient text. The investors are captivated. One scribbles notes. Another strokes his beard with the intensity of someone trying to summon a spirit guide through facial hair alone. A third leans forward and says, "Have we considered vertical integration with mindfulness?" No one asks what that actually means. You sit in the back, clutching a cup of tea, wondering how humanity arrived at this precise intersection of mystical wisdom and quarterly projections. Soon, term sheets are drafted. Investors begin evaluating shamans the way they would evaluate CEOs. Is he scalable? Does he have cross-cultural market potential? Can he achieve time 10 enlightenment growth by question 4? Does he have a compelling exit strategy should the spirit realm become oversaturated? Shamans, bewildered, receive emails inviting them to pitch ritual-based deliverables. One gets an offer to relocate to Palo Alto for a competitive salary and stock options in a company called Vision Quest Inc. Another is asked if he can perform ceremonies via Zoom to streamline onboarding. Meanwhile, startups form overnight. A group of Stanford grads launches an ayahuasca subscription box called AyaCrate. Each month's box includes artisanal cacao, inspirational quotes, a poorly translated tapestry, and a brochure explaining why the customer cannot legally drink any of the enclosed herbs. Another company builds an app called Shamify, which promises to match users with the ideal spiritual guide through machine learning. The app crashes constantly because, as it turns out, souls are difficult to quantify. The marketing language becomes increasingly unhinged. One billboard in downtown San Francisco reads, "Transcendence, but make it passive income." Another ad shows a smiling man in a Patagonia vest sitting cross-legged beside a fire pit on a rooftop terrace. The caption, "Optimize your consciousness today. Limited spots available." You begin to worry for the spirits. You imagine the Jaguar guide sitting in a celestial office, watching humans attempt to convert enlightenment into a branding opportunity. Maybe he's rubbing his temples. Maybe he's writing a strongly worded interdimensional email. As the investment frenzy grows, so does the absurdity. A venture capitalist pitches a cryptocurrency called Spiricoin, explaining that each token represents fractional ownership of a collective spiritual awakening. The room applauds. You weep internally. Then comes the inevitable crash of reality. A due diligence report reveals that awakening cannot be patented. Another notes that chanting cannot legally be trademarked. A third determines that no spreadsheet can predict whether someone will confront their childhood during a ceremony. Investors grow restless. They realize that transcendence refuses to follow the rules of predictable growth curves. They cannot optimize the ineffable. They cannot monetize the sacred. They cannot place a KPI on surrender. Slowly, silently, ayahuasca retreats slide off the slide decks. The frenzy dies down. The startups pivot to something safer, like AI-generated smoothies or biodegradable phone cases. Shamans retreat to the forests and mountains relieved. The jaguar spirit finally stops sharpening his celestial claws. But the strangest part? For a brief moment, even in the chaos, you saw something real flicker behind the madness. A longing for stillness in a world that measures everything except peace. A desire for meaning in a culture obsessed with metrics. Even the most ridiculous attempts at monetizing transcendence point to something unmistakably human. People are desperate to feel alive, desperate to feel connected, desperate to remember something ancient that no pitch deck can capture. And that truth, untouched by jargon, unscaled by capitalism, quietly survives the rise and fall of spiritual startup culture. These are the folks who track their sleep, hydration, and number of breaths per minute, and then proudly add interdimensional communication to their spreadsheets. Biohackers aren't like the rest of Silicon Valley. They don't just want to optimize productivity, they want to optimize existence. If there were a sliders menu for the human soul, they'd adjust it. If there were firmware updates for consciousness, they'd install them. These are the people who swallow supplements with names like Neurospark and BrainFuel X12 while lecturing you on mitochondrial efficiency. So when whispers of ayahuasca and DMT drift into the community, it's only a matter of time before they start treating transcendence like a metrics-based experiment. You watch as a group gathers in a minimalist co-working loft decorated with hanging plants and furniture that looks like it was designed by someone who has never sat down before. Laptops are open, blood oxygen monitors are clipped on fingers. Someone wears a chest strap that measures emotional turbulence. Someone else has a smart water bottle that glows whenever hydration dips below cosmic readiness. The biohacker in charge, a man whose wardrobe consists entirely of black t-shirts that say things like "breathe better," "live longer," stands at the front with a giant screen behind him. A PowerPoint is open. It is titled Ayahuasca, a data-driven journey into the subconscious. You close your eyes for a moment. The spirits sigh. He clicks to the next slide, which features a graph labelled intensity versus insight. The axis is meaningless. The curve is dramatic. The audience nods solemnly, as if witnessing groundbreaking science rather than a doodle made during a coffee buzz. We're aiming for optimized revelation states, the presenter says confidently. Our goal today is to measure enlightenment using real metrics. Everyone murmurs with excitement. No one questions the phrase "measure enlightenment." Before the ceremony begins, participants attach sensors to themselves, heart rate variability monitors, EEG headbands, finger sensors that detect if you're too sweaty to have a spiritual breakthrough. One person straps a continuous glucose monitor to their arm just in case the soul interacts with insulin levels. You sit there, wrapped in a blanket, observing the technological circus. A jaguar spirit somewhere in the astral realm quietly contemplates retiring early. The brew is poured. This time it's served in stainless steel cups with laser-engraved inspirational quotes like, "Optimize your inner operating system." The biohackers drink with reverence, not for the medicine, but for the data it will generate. Minutes later, the effects hit. One participant gasps, "My heart rate variability just spiked." Another stares at his smartwatch in awe. "My sleep score is going to be insane tomorrow." A third raises a trembling hand. "I think I'm experiencing elevated consciousness. Can someone confirm?" Meanwhile, an app connected to all their devices begins broadcasting alerts. Your spiritual resonance is in the 87th percentile. Your ego is dissolving faster than average. Consider breathing more efficiently for maximum cosmic connectivity. The room glows with screens as people frantically track their internal journeys in real time. You've never seen anyone try to quantify transcendence, but here it is, a crowd of adults attempting enlightenment through biometric feedback loops. Someone begins describing their visions in clinical terms. I'm encountering a being made of rotating hexagons. Emotional load appears moderate, logging this as Entity A. Another person stands abruptly, eyes wide, clutching their tablet. My cortisol levels dropped dramatically when the serpent appeared. They tap vigorously. I need to screenshot this. The shaman, a real one this time, brought in after the last tech shaman fiasco, stares at the screens with deep confusion. He tries to guide them gently, chanting to shift the room's energy. But the biohackers chant back at him with data. Somewhere between the singing and the spreadsheet updates, something unexpected happens. The tech melts away. Sensors fall to the floor. Watches dim. People stop obsessing over metrics and start actually feeling their way through the experience. Tears come, quiet, simple, human. The shaman smiles softly. He knew this would happen. When the ceremony ends, the biohackers look transformed. Hair mussed, eyes wide, spreadsheets abandoned. One whispers, maybe not everything needs to be optimized. Another says, should we unplug sometimes? A third closes his laptop slowly, as if performing a sacred ritual. You breathe deeply. For the first time tonight, the room feels peaceful, because even the most data-driven souls eventually discover what shamans have known for centuries. The spirit world does not support Bluetooth. Imagine 30 grown adults in designer hoodies sitting cross-legged, chanting phrases they found on Pinterest. Now imagine all of them projectile vomiting at once. Spiritual, debatable, memorable, absolutely. The ceremony begins in what can only be described as a WeWork meets wild mysticism aesthetic. You're sitting in a large room decorated with Himalayan salt lamps, hanging macrame, and faux native wall art someone definitely bought from a big box store. The lighting is dim, but not in a sacred way, more in a the bulbs are too expensive to replace way. Everyone is seated in a circle on ethically sourced meditation cushions. Each cushion is branded, some with a company logo, some with motivational quotes like, "Be here now," or "Manifest synergy." The chanting begins, a strangely enthusiastic, moderately off-key blend of Sanskrit words and self-help affirmations. One tech bro in particular leans fully into it, vibrating with the ambition of someone trying to spiritually outperform the group. He chants so loudly that one of the salt lamps flickers in fear. A former product manager sitting beside you whispers reverently, "I read that chanting raises your vibrational frequency." His Apple Watch buzzes. He glances at it mid-chant, nods seriously and murmurs, "My heart rate variability agrees." You close your eyes. You'd like to slip into the ceremony, to surrender to the atmosphere, but there's something deeply distracting about hearing someone chant Aum in a Patagonia vest. Then the facilitator enters, a soft-spoken man wearing linen pants, and the self-satisfied expression of someone who's about to watch a room full of salaried professionals fall apart. He carries the brew in a beautifully carved gourd bowl, which clashes spectacularly with the room's industrial shelving and artisanal kombucha fridge. He explains gently, "This medicine will help you purge what no longer serves you." A tech bro with an overcompensating beard nods vigorously. "Yes," he whispers, "I need to purge my limiting beliefs." You think silently, and probably your lunch. The brew is passed around the circle. You sip, bitter, earthy, same as always. It tastes like boiled forest floor with a hint of bad decisions. But the tech bros analyze it like a wine tasting. "I'm sensing notes of bark," one says. "Definitely organic," another replies. A third swirls it gently in his cup and murmurs, This pairs well with personal transformation. And then the waiting begins. Everyone sits quietly, breathing deeply, pretending not to panic. One bro attempts lotus position but immediately loses circulation in both legs. Someone else starts humming because they read online that sound can stabilize the soul. A man named Jason stares intensely at his hands, waiting for them to turn into fractals. The room grows still, heavy. Then it happens. One person leans forward, another groans, a third clutches their branded bucket, and suddenly, like synchronized swimmers but much louder and significantly less graceful, the entire room purges. It's dramatic, it's unstoppable, it's musical in a deeply unfortunate way. The chanting stops, the salt lamps dim in sympathy. Someone shouts, "I release the burden of my father's expectations," right before collapsing into their bucket. You sit in awe. It's the most chaotic group therapy session you've ever witnessed. But beneath the absurdity, something real unfurls. After the purge, the room quiets. Tech bros wipe their faces. Someone pats another's back gently. Jason whispers, "I think I just forgave myself for 2014. A man in a hoodie with a crypto logo begins crying softly and saying, "I just want to love my team better." The facilitator circles the room, placing hands lightly on shoulders, murmuring, "Blessings." The atmosphere shifts again, softer now, less ridiculous, more human. People aren't performing anymore. They're vulnerable in a way money, hoodies, and jargon can't protect. Someone admits they're lonely. Someone else says they're tired of pretending. Someone else confesses they haven't taken a real day off in years. For a moment, the room becomes something ancient, not polished or branded or optimized. Just a group of people sitting together, purging not just their guts, but their shame, fear, guilt, and stress. When the ceremony ends, everyone looks wrecked, but strangely peaceful. The tech bros leave slowly, stepping out into the cool night air, clutching their tote bags full of supplements and self-discovery worksheets. And as you walk behind them, you can't help but marvel. For all their fancy tools and data and posturing, at the end of the day, even tech bros are just human beings trying very, very hard to heal. Someone on Twitter claims DMT opens portals. Another claims aliens installed the pyramids. A third claims their toaster spoke to them. Nobody is sleeping anymore. This is the era when speculation becomes a national pastime. The internet, already a fragile ecosystem of opinions and unhinged energy, becomes supercharged the moment someone with 30 million followers tweets something like, "Has anyone else noticed reality feels optional?" Within minutes, thousands reply with theories, diagrams drawn in Microsoft Paint, and at least one person insisting they've personally met the architect of the simulation, and he was super chill. You scroll through the chaos. Every corner of the internet is vibrating with possibility, paranoia, and poorly cropped screenshots of ancient statues. Entire Reddit threads spring up overnight, filled with debates like, "DMT is the key to unlocking hyperspace." No, bro, hyperspace unlocks you. Actually, hyperspace is just a metaphor for unprocessed childhood trauma. You sit back, sip water, and wonder how we got here. Part of it, of course, is the Musk effect, the moment when a billionaire casually mentions interdimensional consciousness during a podcast, and the entire tech world spirals into a frenzy. Suddenly everyone's an amateur physicist. People who struggled with high school algebra now passionately explain quantum tunneling as if it's a personality trait. Someone launches a YouTube channel called DMT, but make it science, featuring a man in aviators explaining how DMT absolutely proves the existence of 14 simultaneous universes, where every version of you is also microdosing. The comment section is a battlefield of enthusiasm, skepticism, and people asking for timestamps. Meanwhile, TikTok becomes a spiritual arms race. Influencers go viral for claiming, "I took DMT and met my future self. I took DMT and discovered the universe is lactose intolerant. I took DMT and now gravity negotiates with me. The last one gets 10 million views." Conspiracy. Theories begin breeding at alarming rates. Someone posts a video claiming that the pyramids were actually built by ancient engineers who were tripping so hard on DMT that they received step-by-step blueprints from a cosmic project manager named Zorflax. Another insists that volcanoes are portals guarded by salamanders who know too much. You watch one earnest man livestream from his garage at 3 a.m. to declare DMT is clearly a communication protocol invented by extraterrestrial beings. Wake up, sheeple. Behind him, a laundry basket quietly judges him. It's not all chaos, though. Some people genuinely search for meaning, connection, understanding. Others are just bored. Many are deeply sleep-deprived. But online, intention blurs. Hype spreads faster than truth. Everyone wants answers, and no one wants citations. Then come the devices. A startup releases a helmet called the Psychospanner, claiming it amplifies the pineal gland. The marketing video shows an engineer nodding solemnly while wearing something that looks like a colander sponsored by Tesla. It sells out instantly. Another company begins working on a portal detector. It's just an EMF reader with a sticker, but people carry it around like ghost hunters for vibes. One guy points at a microwave and shouts, "It's happening!" His wife turns the microwave off. The portal closes. At this point, sleep becomes optional. Forums buzz all night long. Discord servers erupt in debates about whether DMT elves are benevolent mentors or simply overworked interdimensional customer support. People document their dreams as if decoding prophecy. Others claim they can astral project into Walmart. And yet, beneath all the noise, you can feel something tender, something very human. People want to understand why their lives feel so strange. They want wonder. They want magic. They want reassurance that all the chaos means something. So they speculate. Boldly. Ridiculously. Endearingly. As you scroll through yet another thread arguing whether DMT can let you communicate with your toaster, consensus maybe, you sigh gently. Because deep down you understand what the Musk Effect era really is. A collective yearning dressed in memes, noise, theories, and too many late-night energy drinks. For connection in a world that increasingly feels like it's running on autopilot. And honestly, if believing your toaster whispered cosmic secrets gets you through the week, who are any of us to judge? You watch someone return from a trip claiming they finally understand empathy, and then immediately schedule 6 back-to-back meetings. This is the era when psychedelics collide headfirst with hustle culture, a meeting as chaotic and ill-advised as 2 Roombas trying to share the same kitchen. Workers attend weekend retreats, stare into the void, meet their inner child, apologize to a fern, and come back on Monday convinced they have unlocked the secret to being better humans. And by better humans, they mean more productive humans, because somewhere along the way, the line between enlightenment and efficiency became dangerously blurry. You're sitting in an open office. A man wearing noise-cancelling headphones and a shirt that says "Grind Gently" bursts through the door, eyes shimmering with afterglow. He places his hands dramatically on his desk, breathes deeply, and whispers, "I finally get compassion." You watch, hopeful for a moment. Then he opens his laptop, hammers his keyboard like it's misbehaving, and sends out 90 calendar invites. Within minutes, everyone's week is ruined. He begins telling people they should lean into their emotional authenticity, but also insist that Question 3 deliverables can absolutely be achieved by Friday if everyone just aligns with their inner purpose. He says this while eating a protein bar shaped like a pyramid. Everywhere you look, colleagues are riding the productivity awakening wave. It's spiritualization, but with KP is wellness. but with action items, enlightenment but heavily colour-coded. One woman claims her DMT journey taught her the value of deep listening. You watch her nod gently through a team meeting, eyes soft, posture serene. Then, the moment a junior designer hesitates over a question, she snaps back into managerial mode and says, "We don't have time for feelings, just send me the wireframe." Another co-worker announces he's discovered the oneness of all beings, which is beautiful, except he also changed the shared office playlist to a 10-hour loop of chanting, and no one can concentrate anymore. He refuses to turn it off, insisting it invites alignment. The accountant mutters that it invites migraines. HR tries to adapt by introducing a new initiative called Spirit-Driven Productivity. The brochure includes phrases like optimize your heart chakra for leadership and channel unity consciousness into quarterly goals. You genuinely consider hurling yourself out a softly lit window. It doesn't help that podcasts jump on the trend. Influencers release episodes titled How to Get More Done by Becoming One with Everything, 5 Ways to Leverage Ego Death in the Workplace, and Why Your Inner Child Should Be on Your Board of Directors. You watch as productive enlightenment becomes a competitive sport. People compare visions. They brag about whose ego dissolved fastest. They track their integration progress on Notion templates with pastel colour schemes. Your manager, a man who once threatened to schedule a meeting on Christmas Eve, returns from a ceremony claiming to have met a cosmic grandmother who told him to slow down. 48 hours later, he creates a new internal doc titled Speed Goals for 2026. It would be funny if it weren't also painfully accurate. But occasionally a crack of sincerity slips through. In a quiet corner of the office, you overhear 2 developers sharing actual vulnerabilities, real ones, not the "my greatest flaw is that I care too much," about success variety. Someone admits they're exhausted. Someone else says they feel unseen. A third says the visions reminded them of a peaceful moment from childhood, and they haven't felt that gentle in years. And you think maybe something is actually working here. Not the productivity part, that's a disaster, but the tiny openings, the glimpses of humanity that peek out between spreadsheets and Slack threads, the brief pauses before people return to their usual overclocked selves. Because even when enlightenment gets filtered through corporate nonsense, the smallest pieces still have power. A moment of softness, a second of clarity, a breath that isn't panicked. For now, though, the productivity awakening marches on. People chase spiritual efficiency. They weaponize inner peace. They schedule mindfulness sessions with the same urgency as budget meetings. And you sit back, sipping lukewarm tea, marvelling at the absurdity of it all. Because it turns out that even touching the infinite, some people just really, really love a good calendar invite. You travel back to the Amazon, only to find out half the group flew in from San Francisco and is loudly asking the shaman for the Wi-Fi password. It's immediately clear that this retreat is not going to be the reverent, humbling journey you imagined. The rainforest hums around you, ancient and alive, but your fellow travellers seem determined to treat it like an experiential Airbnb. Luggage wheels drag across uneven jungle paths. Someone complains that their organic bug spray isn't working with their microbiome. A man in expensive hiking boots loudly declares he is so ready to get off the grid while wearing an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, and a chest strap that measures stress levels in real time. You take a deep breath, trying to reconnect with the stillness of the land. The shaman approaches, offering a soft smile, a gesture that says, "Welcome, you're safe. Also, please prepare yourself emotionally for what's about to happen." Before he can begin speaking, one of the tourists raises their hand. "Do you have Wi-Fi?" they ask. The shaman pauses, slowly, patiently. A master of composure, he simply gestures to the forest. "This is the connection," he says. They nod politely, but you can see in their eyes they are already drafting a negative Yelp review. As night falls, everyone gathers for the opening ceremony. The fire crackles. The air thickens with the scent of herbs, smoke, and centuries of tradition. The shaman begins chanting low, melodic tones woven from generations of healing. The Amazon seems to lean closer, listening. Then someone sneezes loudly and says, "Sorry, allergies," as if the rainforest itself has inconvenienced them. The group settles again, legs crossed, spine straight, eyes closed. A gentle peace begins to rise, and is immediately destroyed when another participant whispers, "Do jaguars respond to AirPods?" You briefly consider lying down in the foliage and letting the earth reclaim you. The ceremony begins. The ayahuasca is served. People sip nervously, some reverently, others as if they're sampling a trendy wellness tonic from a boutique cafe. A woman admits she thought the brew would taste like cacao. She is deeply mistaken. Within minutes, the jungle grows quiet. The brew takes hold, and so does the chaos. One man begins narrating every vision he has in excruciating detail, like he's live tweeting the spirit realm. Another tries to fist bump an ancestor. A third begins apologizing to a tree for participating in deforestation by existing. Someone crawls toward the shaman, whispering, "I think my soul unlocked developer mode." Someone else insists their spirit animal is a penguin, even though the shaman gently reminds them penguins do not live here, cosmically or geographically. And then comes the purge. Bold, sudden, enthusiastic. The forest accepts it gracefully. The tourists less so. You hear dramatic groaning, frantic flapping of ponchos, and someone shouting, "I did not consent to this experience." The shaman remains calm through it all. He tends, comforts, steadies. This is not chaos to him. This is healing in its rawest form. The tourists, however, treat the process like a customer support nightmare. One demands ginger tea, another demands a refund. Someone quietly asks whether the purge can be biohacked for efficiency. But slowly, very slowly, the noise fades. The forest wraps its arms around everyone. The visions soften. Tears come, real ones. Not performative Instagram crying, but deep, unfiltered grief and release. People begin letting go without words, surrendering without instruction. The land works on them quietly, ancient and patient. Hours later, as the fire dies and the moon sinks low, a quiet settles over the group. A quiet so profound even the loudest tourist doesn't dare break it. The shaman speaks again, gently, offering blessings, gratitude and grounding, and something miraculous happens. The tourists listen. For the first time since they arrived, they're not asking for Wi-Fi. They're not treating the ceremony like a spiritual Disneyland ride. They're simply present. Small humans in a vast, breathing world that existed long before them and will continue long after their calendars, apps and gadgets stop buzzing. You breathe out. The forest breathes with you. Because even though spiritual tourism can be messy, clumsy and unintentionally comedic, sometimes people still find exactly what they didn't know they were seeking. And the rainforest, patient beyond human comprehension, forgives their first impressions. Picture a traditional healer calmly explaining sacred rituals while a CEO says, "Could we make this faster? My Uber is coming in 20 minutes. The clash is immediate, not hostile, just cosmically incompatible. On one side, a shaman who has spent decades learning from the forest, the rivers, the stars, and the quiet wisdom passed down through generations. On the other, a man whose primary spiritual practice is rearranging the apps on his phone's home screen for workflow clarity. You sit between them in a ceremonial hut, watching the cultural equivalent of a turtle negotiating with a blender. The shaman begins with a long grounding breath. He closes his eyes, places a hand on the earth, and murmurs a blessing in his native language. The air feels different instantly, thicker, sacred, humming with meaning. The CEO shifts uncomfortably, tapping his foot. "So how long is this part?" he whispers. "This part," the shaman replies gently, "is not timed." The CEO blinks. The concept of not timed is foreign to him. His entire life revolves around optimization. Quicker stand-ups, faster shipping cycles, microwave meals that cook in 90 seconds instead of 120. Patience is not his strong suit. The shaman continues the preparation ritual, arranging symbolic objects, lighting herbs, speaking to the spirits. The CEO watches with furrowed brows, clearly debating whether he should ask for a slide deck explaining the process. Finally, he can't hold it in. "Have you ever considered streamlining this?" he asks. "Like creating a condensed version, a minimum viable ritual?" You hear the spirits groan. The shaman, to his credit, does not laugh or weep. He simply smiles gently, the way an elder smiles at a child who has asked if the moon is made of cheese. "This ceremony," he says softly, "is not meant to be efficient. It is meant to be meaningful." The CEO nods slowly, pretending to understand. He does not. When the shaman invites the group to sit silently and reflect, the CEO pulls out his phone and opens a meditation app. "Just to support the process," he whispers. The phone dings loudly. Several forest spirits consider resigning. As the ceremony begins, the shaman speaks about intention, about entering the experience with humility, openness, and respect. The CEO responds by opening a notebook titled Key Takeaways from Ayahuasca. He raises his hand. "Quick question," he says. "What's the ROI on intention?" The shaman stares at him for a long moment, then says simply, "Your life." The CEO writes this down as if it were a business metric. When the brew is offered, the shaman holds the cup reverently. He blesses it. He sings a prayer. He thanks the plant, the land, the ancestors. It is a moment filled with quiet beauty. The CEO takes the cup, swirls it like wine, and sniffs. "Is this gluten-free?" he asks. "I'm paleo." You consider gently placing him outside until nature corrects him. As the medicine begins to take effect, the CEO leans back, eyes wide. "Whoa," he breathes. It's like VR, but emotional. He tries to negotiate with the visions. "Can we skip to the breakthrough part?" He asks the universe. The universe ignores him. Meanwhile, the shaman sits beside him, singing softly, holding space with the grace of someone who has guided thousands through the unknown. The CEO flops around, gripping his branded water bottle like a talisman. At one point he gasps, "I think the spirits are talking to me. Wait, no, that's just my Slack notifications ringing in my head." But slowly, miraculously, something shifts. His breathing steadies. His shoulders drop. His desperate need to control the experience softens, melts, dissolves. His ego, the same one that confidently micromanages teams of hundreds, becomes very quiet. For the first time in a long time, he stops trying to optimize anything. When the visions fade and dawn creeps into the forest, the CEO sits in silence, humbled. The shaman offers him tea. He accepts it with trembling hands. "This," he sees softly, "was not what I expected." The shaman nods. "Good," he replies. Because for one rare moment the CEO stops measuring, planning, strategizing, and simply exists. And the spirits, relieved, take a long overdue coffee break. You witness someone discover their past lives, their shadow self, and their childhood fear of pigeons, all within 12 minutes. It gets emotional. It begins innocently enough, everyone entering the Maloka with quiet steps, the fire glowing softly, the jungle humming like an ancient lullaby. There's a stillness in the air, the kind that signals a deep, significant night ahead. The shaman moves gracefully, lighting incense, preparing the brew, murmuring prayers that feel older than the trees themselves. And then there's him, the man who will soon descend into the most chaotic spiritual unravelling you've ever seen. He sits near the front, fidgeting nervously. He tells anyone who will listen that he's done mushrooms twice, and is therefore experienced. The spirits overhear this and exchange cosmic glances. The shaman gently reminds him to breathe. He nods confidently. He does not breathe. The ayahuasca is poured, a thick, earthy liquid carrying centuries of healing and absolutely no tolerance for bravado. He drinks his cup in one gulp, wipes his mouth and whispers, "That wasn't so bad." The shaman's eyebrow twitches. For a few minutes, all is quiet. Then it begins. First, the man gasps loudly, a sound so dramatic the entire room turns. He clutches his chest, eyes bulging, whispering, "It's happening." He doesn't specify what it is, but given what follows, everything might be the correct answer. He starts laughing, gently at first, then uncontrollably, like a hyena at a comedy club. The laughter morphs into sobbing. The sobbing morphs into shouting. They know! But he does not explain who they are. The shaman moves toward him calmly, like someone approaching a very emotional raccoon. Suddenly he claims to remember his past lives, all of them. He shouts, "I was a blacksmith in medieval France," before immediately announcing, "and also a librarian in the 1700s. A moment later he gasps and declares, "And one time I was a duck." The shaman places a grounding hand on his back. It does not help. He turns his head slowly, pupils the size of dinner, plates, and whispers, "Do ducks have regrets?" Before anyone can respond, his memories pivot sharply. He meets his shadow self, loudly. He yells at the ceiling, "Stop judging me!" even though the ceiling is minding its own business. He argues with thin air for several minutes, claiming his shadow self never believed in his potential. The purge arrives with catastrophic enthusiasm. His bucket becomes a war zone. The spirits wince. The shaman silently thanks his ancestors for patience. The man loudly apologizes to the bucket, promising to be a better person. But the journey continues. Suddenly he stiffens. He whispers, "The pigeons! Oh no, the pigeons!" He begins flapping his arms urgently. He dives under his blanket as if shielding himself from an invisible flock. "They know I dropped the bread on purpose," he cries, trembling. Someone tries to comfort him. He yells, "Don't let them peck my truth." The entire group is now having a shared experience called deep second-hand spiritual panic. The shaman expertly shifts the energy of the room, chanting, blowing tobacco smoke, grounding the space piece by piece. Slowly the man's meltdown softens. He stops shouting about pigeons. He stops reenacting his medieval blacksmith life. He stops arguing with his shadow self, who has likely gone on break. What follows is a long, trembling silence. Then, with swollen, tearful eyes, he whispers the most honest thing he said all night. "I think I have some stuff to work on." And the shaman nods gently as if to say, "Yes, my child, that is why you're here." By dawn he is exhausted, humbled, wrapped in a blanket like a spiritually traumatized burrito. The group sits in a circle, sharing softly. When it's his turn, he clears his throat and says, "Last night was powerful," which is a very polite way of saying absolute psychological demolition. But that's the beauty of ceremonies like this. They unravel you, expose you, shake out the dust in your soul you didn't know existed, even the pigeon-related dust. Healing rarely looks graceful. But sometimes the messiest journeys open the deepest doors, and sometimes those doors lead straight through a flock of emotional pigeons. What once took decades of learning, devotion and lineage is now being packaged as the Ayahuasca Mastery Online course, early bird discount available. You stare at the advertisement in disbelief. It features a sunset, a silhouette of a meditating person who is definitely a stock photo model, and a tagline that reads, "Unlock your inner shaman in 30 days." The course promises lifetime access, downloadable worksheets, and a bonus module on managing your energetic brand. You scroll down and discover that, for an additional fee, you can earn a certificate suitable for framing, proof that you are now, according to the internet, spiritually competent. It is unsettling and hilarious and depressingly on brand for the century you live in. Because somewhere along the way, deep wisdom, cultivated through generations of practice, sacrifice, humility, and service, collided with online marketing funnels, and the result is a spiritual clearance aisle, sacred rituals repackaged as bite-sized content, sold like productivity hacks. You attend a masterclass out of morbid curiosity. The instructor appears on screen wearing beads bought from Etsy and a linen shirt ironed within an inch of its life. He greets the students with a warm, confident smile, saying, "Some call me a modern medicine man, but you can just call me Dave." Dave has never met a plant spirit in his life, but he has absolutely mastered the art of targeted ads. He begins the lesson by explaining that ayahuasca is basically nature's therapist, which makes several actual spirits in the Amazon wince simultaneously. He promises to teach you how to activate your inner guidance algorithms, spiritual language he borrowed from a software engineering blog. As Dave talks, you realize he has studied not the medicine, but the market. His PowerPoint includes clip art vines, diagrams shaped like chakras, and a slide titled "The ROI of Cosmic Awakening." The chat fills with questions like, "Does this work with keto? And can I manifest a raise? And will this help me sleep better if my pillow is bad?" You close your eyes and breathe deeply. Somewhere in the jungle, a jaguar spirit is considering throwing Dave into a symbolic ravine. But the commodification goes far beyond online courses. Everywhere you look, mysticism has become merchandise. There are ayahuasca-themed candles, ayahuasca affirmation decks, ayahuasca t-shirts sold by companies that cannot locate Peru on a map. One store even sells shaman starter kits, which include a feather, a sage bundle, and a QR code that links to a guided breathing exercise recorded by someone named Tiffany. Retreat centers multiply like startups. Instead of humble huts built near the river, they now feature infinity pools, an on-site barista, and traditional ceremonies, led by weekend-trained facilitators who learned everything they know from YouTube. Participants receive branded tote bags. The jungle receives deep, weary sighs. As you walk through one such retreat center, you overhear two guests discussing their goals. "I'm hoping this helps my personal brand," one says. "I'm hoping this helps my gut health," another replies. You want to gently shake them and whisper, "The medicine is not a wellness supplement." But even in your frustration, you notice something complicated. These people are lost, seeking something, desperate to feel connected to themselves, to others, to the world. And in their desperation, they reach for whatever version of mysticism the market delivers to them, even the discount mass-produced kind. Later that night, you sit with a real shaman, patient, humble, carrying memories older than your country. You ask him how he feels about the commercialization of his sacred work. He looks at the stars for a long moment. "People are thirsty," he says softly, "but they don't know what they're thirsty for." He tells you that the medicine remains what it has always been, a teacher, not a product. The plants cannot be bought, sold, branded, or optimized. They live in the earth, not in an app, and those who truly seek wisdom will eventually find their way to it, with or without a certificate of completion. You breathe deeply, letting his words settle, because despite the noise, despite the merch and the marketing, and Dave's aggressively beige PowerPoints the heart of the tradition still beats, quiet, ancient, uncommodified, waiting for those willing to listen. You open your eyes, back in your bed, realizing enlightenment didn't magically pay your bills. Your laundry is still unfolded, your cat still judges you. The morning light filters in through your curtains, not the golden, ethereal glow of a cosmic sunrise, but the ordinary, your rent is due next week kind of sunlight. Your room smells faintly like lavender and the candle you forgot to blow out last night. You stretch, waiting for the lingering sense of universal wisdom to wash over you again, but all that comes is a stiff neck and a reminder that your mattress has seen better eras. Your cat sits on the edge of the bed, staring at you with narrowed eyes, as if asking, "Did communing with the infinite help you scoop my litter box any faster?" You sigh. Apparently not. There's something almost surreal about the transition from otherworldly visions to the very mundane reality of your bedroom. Last night you were floating through geometric galaxies, speaking to benevolent serpent beings, shedding emotional layers like old coats. Today, you're trying to find your socks. One is behind the dresser, the other is in the refrigerator. Somehow this does not feel out of character. You shuffle into the kitchen, half hoping a shimmering jaguar spirit followed you home like a celestial emotional support animal. Instead, you find dishes in the sink that you definitely meant to wash 2 days ago. Your spiritual clarity fades slightly at the sight. The jaguar would not approve. You open your fridge. It contains one wilted cucumber, a nearly empty jar of salsa almond milk that expired during the previous lunar cycle. You stare into its sad interior, reflecting on how the universe showed you the interconnectedness of all things except your grocery list. Your phone buzzes. A text from your boss. Reminder, team meeting at 9. Hope you're ready to crush it this week. You close your eyes and inhale deeply, summoning every ounce of inner peace you acquired. Then you exhale it all immediately because the phrase "crush it" feels spiritually violent this early in the morning. You scroll through your email, bills, subscriptions you forgot to cancel, a promo asking if you'd like to sign up for a meditation app that has somehow sensed your recent existential vulnerability. None of these things care that you briefly transcended the limits of time and space. You make coffee, not ceremonial cacao brewed beneath a canopy of ancient trees, but pre-ground beans that taste vaguely like resignation. As the machine sputters, you think back to your visions, the clarity, this softness, the feeling of being held by something larger than yourself, and then you look down at the coffee spilled on your kitchen floor. The universe giveth, the universe spilleth. A soft sadness creeps in, not regret, just the bittersweet realization that enlightenment does not come with a user manual for daily life. No one tells you how to integrate cosmic truth with laundry. No one explains how to carry transcendence into rush hour traffic. No celestial being reminds you to pick up cat litter. Your mind drifts back to the ceremony, the chanting, the messages, the purging, the warmth, the unraveling, the rebuilding. You felt cracked open, reshaped, renewed. And now you feel behind on chores. It's jarring, but also profoundly human. As you sip your mediocre coffee, something soft settles into place. A quiet acceptance, a recognition that the point was never to escape reality, just to see it more clearly. The dishes still need washing, the bills still need paying, the cat still expects the world to revolve around her. But you are slightly different now, even if the world hasn't changed, the way you move through it has. Your shoulders loosen, your breath deepens. You look around your messy kitchen and smile gently, because it's still your life, imperfect, chaotic, beautiful in unglamorous ways. Maybe enlightenment isn't floating above the complications of existence. Maybe enlightenment is remembering to be kind to yourself inside the complications. You pick up your laundry basket, you pet your judgmental cat, you open your laptop to face the meeting you do not want and the inbox you fear, and somewhere faintly, whether from memory or from the spirit realm, you hear a jaguar chuckle and say, "You've got this." Somewhere in the cosmic realm, a jaguar, an ancestral grandmother, and a glowing geometric entity gather around a table to discuss whether humans should be allowed unsupervised consciousness ever again. The table is carved from stardust, glowing faintly with a soft shimmer of galaxies. Time moves strangely here, or rather, not at all. There is no past or future, only the eternal, exasperated present. The jaguar lounges with undeniable authority, tail flicking, cosmic whiskers twitching every time someone on Earth says something profoundly misguided about activating their DNA. Beside him sits the ancestral grandmother, wrapped in woven light that ripples like warm river water. Her presence radiates patience, ancient, tired patience, the kind that comes from watching humans repeatedly ignore clear instructions for thousands of years. Her hands rest atop the table, fingers tapping in the rhythm of wisdom itself. Across from them the geometric entity hovers, its form shifts constantly, a glowing polyhedron one moment, a swirling fractal the next, occasionally rearranging itself into shapes that would give mathematicians heart palpitations. It communicates in harmonious tones that ripple through the chamber like chimes made of pure intelligence. The grandmother understands it perfectly. The jaguar mostly ignores it. A glowing scroll materializes in the center of the table. On it, a list of recent human behaviors involving psychedelics. The jaguar sighs deeply, which in the spirit realm causes a minor solar flare 3 universes over. "Let's review," he says, voice a low cosmic rumble. "Someone held a ceremony inside a WeWork last week." The grandmother winces. Did they at least clean the carpet afterward? No. She rubs her temples. Of course not. The geometric entity produces a series of shimmering tones that translate roughly to, "A man attempted to negotiate with the spirit realm using cryptocurrency." The jaguar growls quietly. "I remember that. 1. He tried to barter with me using something called Jag coin." The grandmother shakes her head. Humans have always loved inventing new currencies. Seashells, metals, paper, and now imaginary coins based on imaginary technology. The entity pulses sympathetically. The jaguar clears his throat. Next item. Spiritual tourism. Apparently people are travelling thousands of miles to ask shamans if the forest has Wi-Fi. The geometric entity emits a sound like a disappointed gong. And then, the jaguar continues, we have the self-appointed tech shamans, charging $900 a session to give people mild emotional feedback and serve tea in a yurt. The grandmother lifts her eyebrows. That is bold. "Oh, it gets better," the jaguar says. "One of them claimed I personally endorsed his business." The grandmother chokes on laughter, which causes constellations to rearrange themselves above her head. The geometric entity glows brighter, producing tones that resemble cosmic giggling. The jaguar sighs again, a deep, resonant growl of tired affection. "Look, they're trying. I'll give them that. Humans want connection, meaning, healing. They just make it complicated." The grandmother nods. They forget the simplest truth. The medicine is not a performance. It is a relationship. The geometric entity vibrates in agreement, projecting an image above the table. Humans crying, laughing, purging, panicking, discovering themselves, forgetting themselves, becoming tender, becoming terrified. The grandmother watches the montage with soft, ancient eyes. "They are children wandering through a library full of sacred books," she murmurs. They open volumes they are not ready for, but still, they try to read. The jaguar stretches, claws glinting with starlight. The question remains, should we continue letting them explore consciousness without supervision? The entity produces a long, complex harmonic that translates roughly to, "They mean well, even when they absolutely do not." The grandmother smiles, warm, tired, infinitely compassionate. "Let them continue," she says softly. "They stumble, they misunderstand, they panic, they puke, but sometimes they listen." The jaguar pauses, then nods. "Fine, but I'm not approving any more tech bros for interdimensional access unless they stop bringing wearable devices." The grandmother pats his paw. "We'll work on that." The geometric entity folds itself into a peaceful spiral, shimmering with hope. And somewhere on Earth, a human lies in the jungle under a blanket, heart open, tears streaming, whispering a quiet, trembling truth they've just remembered. The spirits hear it and smile, because despite everything, humans are still worth rooting for. You find yourself surrounded by ring lights, Himalayan salt lamps, and a woman named Luna Starfire, who definitely used to be named Kelly. She gently explains that DMT has realigned her cosmic brand identity as she films herself taking a deeply curated sip of ayahuasca for her followers. The spirits sigh in unison. You look around the retreat space, which has been transformed from a humble ceremonial hut into what can only be described as a boho-themed content studio. Macrame hangs from every beam. Crystals rest on every surface. Candles flicker dramatically, but mostly because someone set them too close to a strategically placed box fan intended to create gentle movement in Luna's hair. Everyone here is an influencer of some sort. There's a woman who teaches quantum stretching, a man who sells breathwork sessions for $200 a pop, and another who makes daily Instagram reels about how he's integrating abundance into his fascia. You briefly wonder if anyone remembers why they actually came. Luna Starfire certainly does not. She positions herself at a flattering 45-degree angle, holds her cup of ayahuasca with manicured precision, and whispers into her phone. "Taking the medicine is an act of becoming, you guys." She ends their sentence with a soft giggle and a wink, as if enlightenment were a brand collaboration. A nearby influencer, Boulder Sage, formerly Brian from Oregon, nods sagely while holding a ring light. "Make sure you tag the shaman," he whispers. "It helps with engagement." The shaman, standing quietly in the corner, does not know what engagement is, and has absolutely no interest in becoming a micro-celebrity. He's simply trying to facilitate a respectable ceremony while surrounded by people who keep asking if the medicine is vegan. The room buzzes with influencer energy, a kind of hyper-stylized enthusiasm that makes everything feel slightly artificial. People adjust their crystal necklaces. Someone sprays ceremonial setting mist, which is just lavender water in fancy packaging. A woman in a flowing white dress chants softly, but only after checking that her microphone is on. The ayahuasca is poured. But instead of approaching the cup with reverence, the influencers treat it like a tasting, flight at an artisanal coffee shop. "Does anyone know the flavour notes?" someone asks. "Is it sustainably sourced?" another inquires. Luna sips theatrically, closing her eyes for the camera. She murmurs. "Very earthy, very ancestral. I can feel my third eye unfurling." Your actual third eye twitches. For a moment there is silence, the kind that precedes either transcendence or disaster. Then, one by one, the influencer's expressions shift. The medicine hits. Luna drops her Instagram persona like a heavy prop and begins whispering, "Oh no, oh this is a lot." Boulder Sage clutches his chest and mutters, "My chakras are buffering." Someone else screams, "Why are the trees breathing in 4K? The purge arrives with cinematic enthusiasm. Beautiful outfits become less beautiful. Ring lights fall over. One woman frantically shouts, "No one film this! Not for my brand!" The shaman calmly moves through the chaos, unbothered by the influencer meltdown. He offers buckets, soothing chants, and a gentle reminder not to fight the medicine. The influencers, however, treat the moment like a spiritual crisis crossed with a PR disaster. But then something shifts. The room quiets, breath slows, tears fall, not aesthetic, not curated, not for the camera, real ones. Luna Starfire removes her mic. Boulder Sage stops posing. A woman who had been rehearsing captions suddenly whispers, "I've forgotten how to be myself." The medicine begins weaving through them, past the filters, past the hashtags, past the layers of branding, and into the soft, unstyled parts. You watch them unravel in the most unmarketable way possible, sincerely. Hours go by. When the ceremony ends, no one reaches for a phone, no one presses record, no one asks about lighting. They sit in a messy, vulnerable circle, exhausted and human. Luna Starfire looks at you with puffy eyes. "I think," she says quietly, "I forgot what authenticity even feels like." You nod gently. Because for one night, the spirits finally unplugged the influences and plugged them back into themselves. And somewhere in the cosmic realm, the jaguar spirit whispers, "Finally." You attend a mindfulness retreat where guests are supposed to remain quiet for 48 hours. Instead, half the group keeps whispering about their visions. One man is loudly journaling, and someone in the back is audibly confronting their childhood. Silence, it turns out, is no match for spiritual overachievers. When you first arrive, the retreat grounds look peaceful, almost suspiciously peaceful, as if curated by an algorithm trying to optimize tranquility. Bamboo fountains burble gently. Wind chimes sway in a perfect pentatonic scale. The check-in desk hands you a schedule printed on recycled paper and a lanyard that reads, "Silence is the true teacher." You immediately know the group will not respect this. Inside the main meditation hall, cushions are arranged in precise rows, each one accompanied by a small card instructing participants to turn inward and observe without reaction. Meanwhile, a man in a neon tracksuit loudly whispers to his wife, "Do you think they'll let us talk to our spirit guides later?" I have follow-up questions. The facilitator enters, serene, calm, barefoot, radiating "I haven't used social media since 2009 energy." She asks everyone to take a vow of silence for the next 2 days. People nod solemnly, overestimating their own capacity for restraint. The first 10 minutes go surprisingly well. Then the whispering begins. At first it's soft, rustling, tiny murmurs, the kind you'd normally associate with library emergencies or someone discovering a very unexpected plot twist in a Quiet Place movie. But soon, the whispers evolve into small conspiratorial clusters. "I saw a blue light last night. I think I met my ancestor. Do you think the facilitator is a reincarnated lemur?" Your eye twitches. The facilitator rings a bell to remind everyone of the silence. The group nods, respectfully, then immediately resumes whispering, but now with cupped hands in front of their mouths, which somehow makes it worse. Meanwhile, a man in the corner is journaling with the intensity of someone trying to write a memoir before his memories escape. Each stroke of his pen gouges the paper. Each turn of the page sounds like a thunderclap. You're convinced he's documenting a spiritual revelation, but he may also just be very dehydrated. Then comes the crying. Someone in the back row begins quietly weeping, but quiet quickly turns to sniffles, then to sobs, then to guttural, emotional exorcism. It echoes through the hall like a wail mourning the loss of its therapist. You try not to judge. Healing is healing. But you also wonder if this person skipped several steps and jumped straight into confronting age 3. The facilitator rings the bell again, adding a gentle but firm, "Please, remember, silence is part of the practice." A woman nods tearfully, then immediately whispers, "Sorry, I'm just releasing trauma." Beside her, another participant whispers back, "No worries, babe. Same. You consider filing a noise complaint with the spirits." The next morning starts with walking meditation, a slow, mindful, deliberate stroll through the garden. Except your group treats it like a silent parade of chaos. One man stomps loudly, as if trying to intimidate the earth. A woman hums quietly to stay grounded. Someone behind you gasps every 6 steps because the soil is speaking. Breakfast is no better. Everyone is supposed to eat in silence, contemplating each bite with reverence. Instead, you hear chew, whisper, chew, whisper, sobbing, chew. Someone loudly scribbling in their journal again. The facilitator looks like she's regretting every life choice that brought her here. By hour 30, the retreat has completely unraveled. Someone starts doing interpretive dance in the courtyard. A man stands facing a tree, whispering apologies to it. A lady in a shawl insists she has unlocked telepathy and is trying to send healing thoughts to her neighbour, who politely whispers, "Stop it, I can feel you pushing." Finally, the facilitator ends the retreat early. She thanks everyone for their effort, spiritual teacher code for please never return. She invites the group to share their experiences now that silence has been lifted. A dozen hands shoot up. Everyone talks at once. Everyone has a breakthrough story. Everyone is absolutely convinced their whispering did not count as breaking silence. You exhale, stepping back into the world, equal parts relieved and exhausted. And you realize something painfully, hilariously true. Humans can meditate. Humans can introspect. Humans can journey into the deepest corners of the soul, but ask them to be quiet, not a chance. You step into a sprawling Silicon Valley mansion where a self-appointed guru wearing expensive linen pants greets everyone with "Namaste, my disruptors." The ceremony includes catered kombucha, branded buckets, and a waiver that definitely should have been read more closely. The mansion itself looks like an HGTV fever dream. Glass walls, floating staircases, and so much open space you're not convinced the architect has ever seen furniture. Soft LED lights glow from beneath strategically placed indoor plants that have definitely been misted by an assistant. There's a giant Buddha statue in the foyer, lovingly handcrafted in a factory somewhere in Ohio. Reverence, optional, aesthetic, mandatory. Participants arrive one by one, mostly wearing designer athleisure and carrying emotional baggage buried under performance bonuses. Someone shows up in a Tesla with the license plate "Optimize." Another wears a hoodie with the slogan "Stay disruptive, stay divine." A third brings their emotional support crystal. Inside, a long wooden table overflows with vegan snacks the guru insists were blessed by the moon. Next to them sits a kombucha bar staffed by someone who was probably a data analyst last month. The flavours include classics like ginger turmeric and new experiments like ayahuasca inspiration, 0% actual ayahuasca, 100% marketing. The buckets, emblazoned with the guru's logo, a stylized lotus holding a $sign, sit neatly in a row like VIP seats at a concert. Each one has a QR code linking to a feedback survey. Before anything begins, the guru ushers everyone into the intention room, which is really just a living space with throw pillows and a massive projector screen. He stands before the group, arms extended like a man unveiling a new software update. Tonight, he says, we will rewrite our operating systems. People nod solemnly, as if their psyches are just apps needing patches. He hands out the waivers, encouraging everyone to skim them with mindfulness. The documents include concerning phrases like, Participant assumes responsibility for any spontaneous past life revelations and property not liable for. Conversations with entities of unknown origin. Someone signs without reading. Someone else signs twice for no reason. The ceremony takes place in the mansion's basement, although calling it a basement feels offensive to basements. This one has heated floors, a waterfall wall feature and cushions so plush you could fall into a trance from comfort alone. Incense burns. Ambient music swells from hidden speakers. A disco ball rotates slowly overhead for reasons the spirits will never understand. The guru begins by chanting in a language that feels suspiciously invented. Everyone joins in, producing a harmonious sound best described as spiritually committed but musically confused. He passes around the brew, ladled from a copper vessel that was probably purchased on Etsy. You take your sip, earthy, bitter, familiar. Everyone else sips as delicately as possible, trying not to make ugly faces because several participants are already live streaming the experience to their private subscriber communities. Then it hits. One man gasps and reaches out as if trying to grab an invisible spreadsheet. Someone else bursts into tears, not from trauma, but because the architecture of the universe is perfectly optimized. Another begins laughing uncontrollably and insists the guru is glowing, which he absolutely is not, though he wishes he were. The purge arrives in waves. Branded buckets are immediately put to work. The mansion echoes with the unmistakable sounds of people confronting their deepest truths while praying no one is recording. Several participants apologize loudly to the universe. One tries to apologize to the waterfall. The guru moves through the room, pretending to channel ancient spirits while subtly checking the time. He whispers affirmations like "release your scarcity mindset," and "your trauma is not tax deductible." Someone nods as if this is profound, but then, as always, the chaos gives way to quiet. People lie back, trembling but open, staring at the ceiling as if it suddenly makes sense. Soft sobs, gentle laughter, a few confessions that sound suspiciously sincere. The guru, briefly overwhelmed by genuine emotion, sits still for once, and in that stillness, something true emerges. These tech workers, normally shielded by metrics, branding, and relentless ambition, soften like wax under a flame. They talk about childhood, fear, loneliness, how tired they are, how disconnected, how they came here seeking shortcuts but found something heavier and real instead. By dawn, everyone looks wrecked, humbled, and vaguely sticky. The branded buckets are full. The kombucha bar is empty. The guru announces a premium integration package, but you walk out into the morning air with something else entirely. The strange, serene knowledge that even inside a multi-million-dollar mansion, filled with posturing and linen pants, humans are still just humans. Bare, messy, longing, reaching for meaning in all the imperfect places, and sometimes even the spirits look down and whisper, "Well, they tried." Among a room full of transcendent revelations and cosmic epiphanies, there is always one poor soul who feels absolutely nothing. As others describe talking to glowing serpents of time, this person sits quietly, wondering if their third eye is defective and whether they should ask for a refund. You notice them immediately, sitting stiffly on their cushion, hands folded neatly in their lap, trying very hard to look spiritually engaged while quietly losing their mind. Their pupils remain tragically normal-sized, their breathing remains irritatingly regular. Meanwhile, the person next to them is discovering their ancestral lineage in 4K resolution. The ceremony begins its steady rise into cosmic pandemonium. One participant is whispering to the walls because the walls are whispering first. Another is floating in a blanket, convinced they've become a cloud. A third is loudly apologizing to their own liver. The shaman moves through the room with graceful calm, guiding everyone through their inner storms, except for this one person. They sit there, waiting, waiting, waiting. Nothing. Not a flicker, not a shimmer, not even a gentle emotional wobble. They swallow, they blink, they look down into their bucket and feel deeply betrayed by its emptiness. You can practically hear their inner monologue unraveling. Did I drink it wrong? Should I have swirled it? Was I supposed to set a bigger intention? Did my subconscious unsubscribe from the ceremony? Why is everyone else living through a cosmic novella while I'm trapped in the world's least interesting meditation? Oh no, oh no. What if nothing is happening because nothing can happen? Is my third eye broken? They look around nervously, comparing themselves to the rest of the room. To their left, someone is ascending into pure light. To their right, someone is meeting the spirit of their great-great-grandfather's alpaca. Across from them, someone is experiencing the emotional arc of a comet. And they feel like they accidentally showed up for jury duty. They shift on their cushion, clearing their throat, trying to subtly hint that they might need customer support. The shaman catches their eye and gives a knowing smile, the universal trust the process smile. They nod politely, but inside they are screaming. Minutes pass, or hours. Time is a mess. They close their eyes tightly, willing themselves to see something, anything, a colour, a shape, a nostalgic childhood memory, a mildly interesting thought. But all they find is the mental equivalent of a blank Word document. Someone nearby whispers, "I'm merging with the universe." They whisper back to themselves, "I'm merging with boredom." Then the panic begins to simmer. They imagine standing up in the middle of the room and shouting, "Hello! Excuse me! Is there a manager for this experience?" But the tiny thread of their remaining dignity stops them. They take a deep breath. They wait. And at first, still nothing. But then, quietly, slowly, something shifts. Not a vision, not a cosmic serpent, not a fractal tunnel leading to the beginning of time. Something much smaller. A memory, a feeling, a soft ache they haven't touched in years, sitting quietly at the edges of their awareness. The feeling of being overlooked, the fear of not belonging, the old familiar pressure to perform, even in healing. It rises like a shy child stepping forward, and the moment they notice it, their breath catches. No colours, no entities, just truth, raw, simple, undeniable. Their eyes fill with tears, not dramatic ones, not psychedelic ones, just human ones. Tears of relief that even their silence, even their stillness was part of the medicine all along. The shaman approaches, sits beside them gently and murmurs, "Not all journeys are loud." They nod, finally understanding. Because while others battled ancient serpents and shadow selves, their journey was a quiet confrontation with their own fear of being left behind, a different kind of purge, a different kind of revelation. And as dawn rises, they no longer wonder if their third eye is defective. They simply realize some visions roar, some visions whisper, and some visions arrive disguised as nothing at all until you finally feel everything. After all the visions, chanting, sweating, emotional breakthroughs, and questionable herbal teas, you look at yourself in the mirror. No glowing aura, no divine crown, just you, a tired human with messy hair and a newfound appreciation for drinking water. Enlightenment, it seems, still requires 8 hours of sleep. For a long moment, you just stare, not in a mystical way, not in a "who am I?" way, more in a wow. That ceremony was a lot, and I appear to have aged 5 emotional years way. Your reflection looks exactly like you'd expect someone to look after, barging through the cosmic realm without a helmet, slightly haunted, slightly puffy, and profoundly dehydrated. You blink slowly. The mirror blinks back. You lean closer, half expecting to see a faint shimmer of stardust still clinging to your eyebrows, Maybe a leftover geometric pattern swirling in your pupils. Nothing. Just your regular face, doing its best. Your hair, once a symbol of normalcy, now resembles something a small bird would consider cozy real estate. Your cheeks are blotchy. Your shirt is wrinkled in ways science cannot explain. You look like a person who has cried, laughed, purged, apologized to an imaginary serpent, reconciled with their inner child, and briefly believed they were made of sound waves. It's shockingly human. You splash cold water on your face, hoping it will trigger some sort of spiritual reboot. Instead, it simply reminds you that your sink is slightly leaky, and you've been ignoring it for 3 months. You sigh. Cosmic potential. Immense. Domestic competence. Not great. The ceremony may have shown you the infinite, the interconnected web of existence, the tenderness of the ancestors, the jaguar's cosmic side-eye. But your body is still limited by things like gravity, soreness, and the basic human need for electrolytes. You chug a glass of water like a pilgrim discovering hydration for the very first time. The afterglow you expected doesn't descend like a halo. Instead, it arrives as something softer, quieter, a small clarity, a gentle knowing. Your mind feels like a cluttered room that was just aired out. Still messy, yes, but breathable. You walk through your space, noticing it as if for the first time. The couch where you nap when life is too much. The mug you always forget to wash. The plant you've nearly killed 4 times. These socks on the floor forming a loose constellation of chaos. These things are not glamorous. They are not mystical. They are not proof of enlightenment. But they're yours. You sit down slowly, your limbs heavy in that very earthly way. No levitation, no cosmic, just muscles that ache from sitting cross-legged too long and a stomach that's politely asking for plain toast. And yet underneath all that ordinariness something glows, something you can't see in the mirror but can feel, faint and steady, like an ember that wasn't there before. The kind of shift that doesn't announce itself, it just stays. Maybe enlightenment isn't a transformation with fireworks. Maybe it's just remembering what it feels like to be a person. A real one. Messy. Confused. Trying. Alive. You think back to the visions, the serpent, the patterns, the grandmother spirit, the jaguar staring into your soul with cosmic disappointment. None of them told you you'd float through life afterward. None of them promised immunity from taxes, heartbreak, hunger, or laundry. They simply showed you yourself, stripped of noise, stripped of fear, stripped of ego. And now here you are, back in your body, with its limits and aches and cravings and imperfections, and it somehow feels okay. More than okay. Sacred even. You yawn. A big, mortal, gravity-bound yawn that no enlightened being would ever upload to Instagram. You crawl into bed. Your sheets smell like detergent and slightly questionable life choices. You curl up, exhaling deeply into the warm, familiar darkness. And the truth settles over you like a blanket. You're not transcending your humanity. You're inhabiting it. Fully, honestly, beautifully. The universe is vast. The realms are infinite. The spirits are busy holding meetings about human incompetence. But you need sleep. And in its own quietly ridiculous way, that too is enlightenment. So tonight, as you lie here in the quiet glow of your room, let's take one last gentle breath together and look back at the absolutely chaotic, hilarious, and strangely inspiring journey we just wandered through. You've travelled from ancient Amazonian ceremonies dripping with meaning all the way to Silicon Valley retreats, dripping with venture capital money and second-hand ponchos. You've watched shamans chant to the rhythms of the forest and tech bros chant to the rhythms of their Apple Watches. You've met jaguar spirits older than time and someone named Tyler who asked his spirit guide to help him optimize workflow. You survived it all with grace. And maybe the funniest thing about this whole adventure is that, despite all the modern misunderstandings, the sacred shortcuts, the overpriced retreats, and the aggressively scented Palo Alto meditation yurts, humans are still doing what humans have always done. Reaching, wondering, trying to connect with something bigger than themselves, even if they end up face down in a beanbag chair somewhere in the process. It's messy, it's ridiculous, it's kind of beautiful. Because whether you're a shaman honouring centuries of tradition, or a programmer trying really hard not to cry during a guided breathwork session, the desire underneath it is the same: to understand life, to ease suffering, to feel connected, even for a moment. And that fragile little thread of longing ties us across eras, across cultures, across every bizarre decision our species has ever made. So as you settle deeper into your warm bed tonight, maybe let a little gratitude seep in. Gratitude for the comforts you have: clean sheets, running water, a thermostat that doesn't judge you. Gratitude that your spiritual growth doesn't require drinking a potion that tastes like fermented despair. Gratitude that you can seek meaning without needing to battle mosquitoes the size of small aircraft. And maybe whisper a quiet thank you to everyone who came before you. The shamans who preserved the knowledge, the explorers who misinterpreted it spectacularly, the researchers, the mystics, the skeptics, the comedians, the people who tried very hard to see God in a conference room, all of them stumbling toward understanding in their own strange way. Because history may be absurd and confusing, but it's also full of people doing their best with what they have, stubborn, hopeful, curious, and occasionally very, very lost. As you drift off now, let the noise settle, let your breath soften, let your thoughts float lightly, like little paper boats on a quiet river. You're safe, you're warm, and you've made it through another long day in this strange, unpredictable world. Sleep well tonight, Ray, and may your dreams be kinder, calmer, and far less chaotic than anything involving Silicon Valley and DMT.